Chapter 1104. The three consecrated looked at Chu Fengmian at the same time. They all had the same thought. So what if Chu Fengmian was strong? This was the headquarters of the ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce, and there were quasi-emperors here. What could Chu Fengmian do? Therefore, in their opinion, Chu Fengmian would definitely accept their request and swallow his grievances. On the phone. However, they didn't notice that the murderous intent in Chu Fengmian's eyes intensified as they spoke. It seemed that Chu Fengmian was still too kind. Looks like you old fogies are courting death. Chu Fengmian slowly stood up from his chair, looked at the three consecrators, and said coldly, "Can't bear it? You can't bear my anger either. I'll give you half an incense stick's time to bring all the bloodstones here. Otherwise, you'll end up like these two good-for-nothings." Chu Fengmian glanced at the three consecrated experts, then at the vice-chairman of the Ghost Deity Society and young Master Lei who were kneeling below. The meaning of his words was self-evident. Arrogance, absolute arrogance. Chu Fengmian actually displayed such an arrogant attitude in front of the three consecrated experts of the ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce. The vice-chairman of the Redwood Chamber of Commerce couldn't help but frown. Chu Fengmian really didn't know how to appreciate favors. The ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce had already given Chu Fengmian a way out. As long as Chu Fengmian admitted defeat, today's matter would be considered over. Who would have thought that Chu Fengmian would still be so arrogant? Looks like the three consecrated experts will have to teach him a lesson. Otherwise, this kid won't know the immensity of heaven and earth and will cause trouble every day. Redwood Chamber of Commerce thought. Chu Fengmian obviously had some hidden forces behind him. It wasn't realistic to kill Chu Fengmian, but at the very least, they had to suppress and teach him a lesson today. "Kid, what did you say?" The faces of the three consecrated experts instantly turned gloomy after hearing Chu Fengmian's words. "Do you think you're a quasi-emperor? Even a quasi-emperor wouldn't dare to say such words to us. You're just a kid who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. We've given you a way out, so don't blame us for not giving you any face. No need to talk nonsense. Suppress this kid and see if he'll still be so stubborn when the time comes." The three consecrated experts spoke at the same time. The three consecrated experts were blood brothers who grew up together. And they cultivated martial arts was almost as powerful as a quasi-emperor when they joined forces. Therefore, even a quasi-emperor would have to expend some effort to defeat these three consecrators, let alone Chu Fengmian, who was merely at the heavenly mandate realm. In their opinions was heavens's. Triple suppression. Ofs. Was of S's of. TT of Fof A, this. Was of Fof of heaven. S. Chu Fengmian, on the other hand, sneered. Facing the pagoda descending from the sky, he suddenly made his move. Chu Fengmian had the ability to fight even against a real quasi-emperor, not to mention that the joint attack of the three consecrators was only at the level of a quasi-emperor. They were no different from the Shueshan that Chu Fengmian had killed before. There was still a huge gap between them and a true quasi-emperor. Since Chu Fengmian could easily kill the Shueshan, he also did not think much of these three consecrators. Chu Fengmian swung his battle dragon claw in the air. This time, the 1,000 formations carved on the dragon scales of the battle dragon claw were unleashed at the same time, enhancing the attack. With a loud rumble, he blasted towards the pagoda. Crack! Under the bombardment of the battle dragon claw, the three pearls of the pagoda were unable to withstand the tremendous power and were shattered on the spot. At the same time, the pagoda was also shattered into pieces. Chu Fengmian easily broke through the joint attack of the three reverends. This brat is hiding his strength. Seeing the transformation of the battle dragon claw, the three consecrators were shocked. The power that erupted from the battle dragon claw was more than 10 times stronger than before. Use the power of the formation to suppress this brat. The trio was startled, but they did not panic. They were currently at the ancient Snake Merchant Association. It might be more difficult for them to deal with Chu Fengmian outside. However, the terrain was on their side. The three consecrators executed a series of hand seals together, causing a brilliant glow to appear all of a sudden, enhancing the strength of the three consecrators. With the enhancement of the glow, the strength of the three consecrators improved further, and they were only a step away from the boundary monarch realm. The three of them uttered a roar and attacked Chu Fengmian once again. The enhancement of the formation. The ancient Snake Merchant Association itself was a huge formation. The three of them were able to control the power of the formation to enhance their strength. Even a boundary monarch would not be able to break through the formation. It was also the reason why they were not afraid of anything. Unless Chu Fengmian managed to break through the formation, they were undefeatable. Formation? Do you think I can't tell? With a thought, the bloodline of the battle dragon in Chu Fengmian's body became restless, causing his figure to expand and transform into the appearance of an ancient battle dragon. The primordial battle dragon sprang forward in the direction of the ancient Snake Merchant Association. Bang! The ancient Snake Merchant Association began to tremble after receiving the attack. Many of its disciples immediately fled for their lives. A formation appeared on the surface of the ancient Snake Merchant Association. The formation was complicated and ancient, which was the defensive formation that the ancient Snake Merchant Association had set up when it was first established. After Chu Fengmian's attack, countless cracks appeared on the protective formation. How is this possible? Even the defensive formation was destroyed by him? The bloodline of the battle dragon, his strength is too terrifying. We need a great highness to deal with him. The three consecrators uttered a roar. It was as if they were summoning someone. Since the defensive formation had been destroyed by Chu Fengmian with a single attack, the three of them did not dare to face Chu Fengmian anymore. They immediately tried to flee for their lives. Did I say you can leave? Come here and kneel down. Chu Fengmian glanced at the three consecrators who had already turned into rays of light and uttered a dragon roar. Chapter 1105. The three consecrators of the ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce were strong enough to fight against the quasi-emperor when they joined forces. However, they were defeated by Chu Fengmian so easily. Everyone was dumbfounded and could not believe their eyes. This was a familiar sight. Just now, Chu Fengmian had the vice president of the Spectre sect in his hands. "Young Master Chu, you can't!" Rosewood shouted anxiously. It was already a big deal that the vice president of the supernatural entity was kneeling before Chu Fengmian. If the three consecrators were to kneel before Chu Fengmian, it would be a disaster. However, Chu Fengmian did not listen to him. He snorted coldly and exerted more force. Three more figures appeared in front of Chu Fengmian. The three consecrators were kneeling on the ground like the vice president of the supernatural entity and young Master Lei. Chu Fengmian did not care about offending the ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce. Since the ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce thought that Chu Fengmian was easy to bully, Chu Fengmian did not need to show them any mercy today. "Kid, just you wait. The great sovereign is in the Chamber of Commerce today. When he arrives, it will be your doomsday." One of the consecrators was still kneeling on the ground and shouted loudly. "Shut up." Chu Fengmian snorted coldly and kicked the consecrator's tongue. Just like the vice president of the supernatural entity, the consecrator could only whimper and could no longer speak. The other two consecrators did not dare to speak after seeing this scene. However, the resentment in their eyes showed their thoughts. "Great sovereign? I will wait here and see when your great sovereign will arrive." Chu Fengmian sat on the chair again and looked at the empty space in front of him. Soon, an ancient aura shrouded the area. This aura alone was enough to make old Ancestor Wu gasp for breath. It was the aura of a quasi-emperor. The aura of an emperor's aura alone was enough to bring about endless power. The target of this aura was none other than Chu Fengmian, who was sitting on the chair. "Great sovereign, it's the great sovereign's emperor's aura. The great sovereign is here." Countless ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce disciples hurriedly knelt on the ground. This was their respect for a sovereign. Even Mahogany was no exception as he knelt down on the ground. Ancestor Wu was like an ant in front of a quasi-emperor, he could only kneel down on the ground. Only Chu Fengmian remained seated. Facing the emperor's might, he was not afraid at all. trying to act mysterious? It's just a little emperor's might. Break for me. Instead, he slowly raised his hand and pressed forward. The ferocious and majestic emperor's aura was completely destroyed, but Chu Fengmian remained seated in his chair, completely unaffected. With a wave of his hand, he had broken through the emperor's might. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have imagined that a heaven's mandate cultivator could break the emperor's aura with a wave of his hand. The emperor's aura represented the majesty of a quasi-emperor. It was a fatal restraint for old ancestor Wu, but Chu Fengmian had easily broken through it. This was even more unbelievable than Chu Fengmian defeating the three consecrators. No matter how strong the three consecrators were, old ancestor Wu was still in the immoral realm and had not truly stepped into the emperor realm. But now, Chu Fengmian was able to break through the emperor's aura with a wave of his hand. It was as if Chu Fengmian had stepped into the emperor realm. Only an emperor could fight against an emperor. This was a truth that had been passed down since ancient times in the ancient monster continent. Looking at Chu Fengmian in front of him, Mahogany's heart was a little crazy. Everything Chu Fengmian had done was completely beyond his understanding. Oh? You actually broke this emperor's might? In 1,000 years, this is the first time someone below the emperor realm has broken through the emperor's aura of a quasi-emperor. What a pity, what a pity. A white-robed figure slowly descended under the emperor's aura. This white-robed man looked like he was only in his 20s and had an ordinary appearance. However, when everyone saw him, they could not help but feel some reverence for him. While this was the might of a venerated emperor, this white-clothed man before them was a true quasi-emperor. He had surpassed the life and death steps and stepped into the emperor realm. What's a pity? Chu Fengmian looked at the white-robed man and said coldly. It's a pity that such a genius will fall in this emperor's hands today. The great senior lord looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly. Boy, no one has dared to make a scene in my ancient snake chamber of commerce for 1,000 years. It should be a capital offense, but considering your aptitude, as long as you stay in the ancient snake chamber of commerce and become a slave for 1,000 years, I will let you go today. The great senior lord looked at Chu Fengmian and said word by word. His words were a verdict and he didn't give Chu Fengmian the slightest explanation. Great senior lord, 1,000 years is too easy for this boy. He must be a slave for the rest of his life. Sparing him the death penalty is already a great gift to him. A foreign elder, who was kneeling on the ground, shouted loudly. Noisy! Chu Fengmian stomped down on the consecrator, crushing his head. Blood and gore splattered everywhere. Although the consecrator's head quickly regenerated, the pain of having his head crushed was something he had to endure. Courting death? The great senior lord was furious. Chu Fengmian had crushed the foreign elder's head in front of him. Chu Fengmian didn't put him in his eyes. Boy, you dare to provoke an emperor realm venerable? It seems like you really want to die. The dignity of an emperor realm venerable cannot be blasphemed. Kneel down. The great senior lord attacked and the sky changed color. A quasi-emperor attacked. Each of his moves contained the power of the heavens and earth. A seal was formed in his palm and he threw a palm strike at Chu Fengmian. The speed of the palm strike was extremely fast. It was 10 times faster than old ancestor Chiwu. In an instant, it had arrived in front of Chu Fengmian. In front of this palm, no one under the sovereign realm could withstand it. Break! At this moment, Chu Fengmian suddenly spat out a word. Then, a dragon roar was heard. Jianwang 8 notes. It was a secret technique of the Battle Dragon clan. The word break blocked the power of the palm strike, preventing it from getting close to Chu Fengmian's body. Oh? A secret technique of the Dragon clan? It seems like you're from a big clan of the Dragon clan. However, even if you're the son of the Dragon King, you still have to die for causing trouble in the ancient snake chamber of commerce. The great senior lord snorted disdainfully. He didn't care about the Dragon clan at all. The ancient snake chamber of commerce was backed by the ancient snake empire. Even if something happened, there would be someone to take care of it. Chapter 1106. Great Venerable Lord is really angry. This brat is finished. No one can stop Great Venerable Lord's anger. If he had knelt down and begged for mercy at the beginning, he might have had a chance to live. Unfortunately, with his aptitude, he is one of the most monstrous geniuses in the ancient snake country. He is going to die today. The disciples of the ancient snake chamber of commerce all sighed when they heard the Great Venerable Lord's words. Today, no matter how monstrous Chu Fengmian's aptitude was, he was just an ant in front of the angry Great Venerable Lord. Everyone below the Emperor realm was an ant, but no one had ever broken this rule that had been passed down since ancient times. Kill! 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 In front of the Great Venerable Lord, Chu Fengmian suddenly shouted the word kill repeatedly. In an instant, his aura reached an extreme point. These words contained an ancient Tao of slaughter. The cultivators of the ancient snake chamber of commerce who were watching trembled when they saw the word kill. It was as if the word kill was enough to take away their lives. Little brat, have a taste of the Tao of killing God. This emperor knows that you have encountered many things, but unfortunately, you still haven't reached the Emperor realm. Everyone below the Emperor realm is an ant. This is the truth that no one can break. The Great Venerable Lord looked at Chu Fengmian as if he was looking at a dead man. He thought that with his strength as a quasi-emperor, dealing with Chu Fengmian would be a piece of cake. He didn't expect that his first move would be blocked so easily by Chu Fengmian. For a quasi-emperor like him, this was absolutely shameful and humiliating. Now, he was really angry. The Tao of killing God descended and bombarded Chu Fengmian with the word kill, as if he wanted to kill Chu Fengmian forever. The world shook and even the heavens were enraged. The full strength of a quasi-emperor was enough to affect the world. All the disciples of the ancient snake chamber of commerce knelt on the ground and trembled, trying to resist this killing intent. Ha ha, little brat, you are going to die. How dare you compete with a quasi-emperor? You are really courting death. Young Master Lei, who was kneeling on the ground, laughed crazily. If the Great Venerable Lord had attacked, Chu Fengmian might have had a chance to survive. But now, the Great Exalted Lord was enraged. Under his all-out attack, Chu Fengmian was already a dead man. The way of killing gods? With such a crude killing intent, he dared to call himself the killing god. You're just a mere quasi-emperor who hasn't truly stepped into the emperor realm, yet you keep calling yourself an emperor. Do you really think you've become a true emperor? Chu Fengmian said disdainfully as he looked at the 8 words that were bombarding him. A quasi-emperor was actually just someone who was half a step into the emperor realm. They had not truly become an emperor yet, which was why they were called quasi-emperors. In ancient times, quasi-emperors were not considered emperors at all. They were only slightly stronger than old ancestors. It was just that quasi-emperors were rare in this era, so the fact that quasi-emperors were included among the sovereigns was actually just a form of self-deception. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but sneer when he heard the Great Venerable Lord's words. Humph. So what if this emperor has yet to step into the emperor realm? The power of a quasi-emperor is not something that a little fellow can contend against. The Great Venerable Lord's face showed some annoyance when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. He had always called himself an emperor, so of course, he knew about the matters of ancient times. It was just that the number of quasi-emperors in this era was much less than the number of emperors in ancient times, so it was fine for quasi-emperors like them to call themselves emperors. But now, Chu Fengmian pointed it out in front of everyone, which felt like a slap to his face, so how could he not be angry? The way of killing gods. Slay with one sword. The Great Venerable Lord coldly snorted and didn't intend to continue talking nonsense. He suddenly attacked, and the 8 words began to condense in front of Chu Fengmian, which then turned into a blood-red sword. This sword contained a murderous aura. It was unknown how many masters it had killed in the past. It was condensed from countless murderous auras to form a killing sword. Before the sword arrived, the murderous aura was already approaching and enveloping everyone. Everyone held their breaths. They couldn't even breathe under the murderous aura. Wherever the killing sword passed, a huge hole was torn in the space. No one could withstand the sharpness of the killing sword. Under the pressure of the murderous aura, the killing sword had already approached Chu Fengmian. You're the first quasi-emperor I've encountered after mastering this move. Then, I'll use you to test it. Great Pagoda Sword Light, support. A sky-piercing sword light erupted from Chu Fengmian's body. This sky-piercing sword light directly enveloped Chu Fengmian's body, causing Chu Fengmian's realm to rise steadily. Chu Fengmian's cultivation rose from the peak of the Heaven's Mandate realm to the peak of the Sovereign realm under the support of the Great Pagoda Sword Light. This sudden change stunned the Great Venerable Lord, but after he quickly saw Chu Fengmian's cultivation, he still sneered. I thought you had some kind of trump card. Whether it's the Heaven's Mandate realm or the Sovereign realm, they're all ants. It's useless no matter how much your cultivation rises. Everyone below the Emperor realm is just an ant. The Great Venerable Lord's words were full of disdain. Although Chu Fengmian's strength had skyrocketed, he was still far from a true Emperor realm master. Such strength was still nothing in the Great Venerable Lord's eyes. Is that so? Then, why don't you take a look at this move? The corners of Chu Fengmian's mouth curled into a sneer as he indifferently spat out 3 words. Soaring Serpent Transformation. The Great Pagoda Sword Light wasn't Chu Fengmian's trump card. He was going to use the Soaring Serpent Transformation. The last time Chu Fengmian used the Soaring Serpent Transformation, he only dealt with those from the Wasteland Alliance, especially Xueshen. Although his strength had reached the level of a quasi-emperor, he wasn't a true quasi-emperor. Chu Fengmian originally planned to fight with a quasi-emperor to test the power of the Soaring Serpent Transformation, but now, someone had delivered himself to his doorstep. Roar! An ancient bestial roar came from behind Chu Fengmian. This bestial roar was so ancient that even the Great Supremacy couldn't tell where it came from. Only Chu Fengmian knew that this was the roar of the Soaring Serpent, an innate divine beast, the roar of the Earth God. At the same time, an illusory figure suddenly condensed behind Chu Fengmian. This illusory figure was at least 3,000 feet tall. The Soaring Serpent Transformation was fully displayed. Chapter 1107. Chu Fengmian's strength was thousands of times stronger than an ordinary Heavenly Fate realm expert. In terms of strength alone, he was dozens of times stronger than old ancestor Wu. Under the support of the Soaring Serpent Transformation, Chu Fengmian's strength increased by 100-fold. He wasn't any weaker than a quasi-emperor. He might even be stronger than a true quasi-emperor. Under the support of the Soaring Serpent Transformation, Chu Fengmian's strength didn't just increase. His divine veins had also expanded by dozens of times. The Soaring Serpent was a connate god beast that represented the earth. Chu Fengmian's god meridians were connected to the underground dragon veins. With the blessing of the Soaring Serpent, the dragon veins in the imperial capital were now under his control. At this moment, even if a quasi-emperor was standing in front of Chu Fengmian wouldn't feel the slightest bit of fear. A quasi-emperor wants to show off in front of me? You're just a mere quasi-emperor. If a true sovereign came, I would be afraid. Unfortunately, you're just a quasi-emperor. You want me to be your slave? Then I'll subdue you today. I've never had a quasi-emperor as a servant. What killing sword? Break for me. Chu Fengmian transformed into the Soaring Serpent Transformation and struck out with his palm. The spiritual energy contained in his palm was even thicker than the earth. The sharpness of the blood sword couldn't even be shaken by Chu Fengmian's palm. Then, Chu Fengmian's palm shattered it on the spot. Then, Chu Fengmian's palm broke through the void and blasted towards the Great Honorable Lord. What kind of secret technique is this? Increasing the strength of a quasi-emperor? How is this possible? No secret technique can do this. Even the secret techniques of the 8 great imperial clans can't do this. The Great Honorable Lord was shocked. He also felt that Chu Fengmian's strength was no different from a quasi-emperor's. This was simply unbelievable. Even the strongest secret technique could only increase the strength by 10 times. The difference between a quasi-emperor and an immortal realm expert was more than 10 times, it was more than 100 times. Therefore, even if a supreme ancestor of the immortal realm went all out and used a secret technique, he would not be able to reach 1/10 of the power of an emperor-to-be. That was why there was such a saying. Everyone below the venerable sovereign realm was like an ant. However, he would never have thought that Chu Fengmian's original strength was already 10 times stronger than Ancestor Wu's. Now, with the addition of the soaring snake transformation, Chu Fengmian's strength had increased by 10 times in a short period of time. With his current strength, not to mention that he was comparable to a quasi-emperor, even any quasi-emperor would not be able to compete with Chu Fengmian in terms of pure strength. Old man, weren't you very arrogant just now? Now, let's see how you're going to suppress me and extract my bloodline. Chu Fengmian looked at the great exalted lord and snorted coldly. In the blink of an eye, countless fist winds blasted towards the great exalted lord. Every fist wind was a secret technique of the Battle Dragon Clan. It was unknown how many times more profound they were than the current Dragon Clan's martial skills. Chu Fengmian possessed 100,000 drops of ancient battle dragon blood essence. It could be said that half of his bloodline was the ancient battle dragon bloodline. These secret techniques of the ancient battle dragon bloodline were all recorded in Chu Fengmian's mind. Especially when Chu Fengmian wanted to use them, it was simply a piece of cake. He did not need any practice, he could use them with a wave of his hand. Damn it! Damn it! The great exalted lord was furious when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. As a quasi-emperor, being scolded by a little guy like Chu Fengmian was simply infuriating him. But now, Chu Fengmian's strength was comparable to a true emperor realm expert. Thus, the great exalted lord could not afford to be distracted. In particular, Chu Fengmian's martial skills were the most mysterious of the dragon race's secret techniques. Now, even the great venerable lord had some doubts in his heart. Was he really the son of the dragon god emperor? He actually knew so many secret techniques of the dragon race. If it wasn't for the fact that the dragon god emperor had no descendants, he would have suspected that Chu Fengmian was the illegitimate son of the dragon god emperor. Kid, don't be so arrogant. You're just relying on the strength of the secret techniques. Let's see how long you can last. The great exalted lord roared furiously. Tao of the slain god descends. Heaven and earth, slain god. Boom! A slain god's shadow condensed behind the great exalted lord's back. The slain god's shadow then merged with the great exalted lord's body. It seemed like the great exalted lord was both himself and the slain god. Boundless blood sea. With a wave of his hand, a murderous intent burst out from his body. The murderous intent turned into a sea of blood, filled with boundless murderous intent. It swept toward Chu Fengmian, covering the sky and covering the earth. The ancient slain god is just a divine spirit. It's incomparable to a true innate divine beast. Even the slain god will be torn apart in front of the soaring serpent. Heaven-tearing claw. A dragon claw suddenly condensed in front of Chu Fengmian. The 1,000 arrays on the dragon scales were activated. The moment the claw struck forward, the sea of blood and murderous aura were torn apart by the heaven-tearing claw. It could even tear apart the sky, let alone the sea of blood. Chu Fengmian didn't stop there. The moment the heaven-tearing claw tore apart the sea of blood, it changed its direction and clawed towards the great exalted lord. Damn it! What kind of demonic beast is behind you? What kind of secret technique can make this person's strength reach such a shocking level? If it wasn't for this secret technique, you're just an ant. The great exalted lord roared as he saw the sea of blood being torn apart. The reason why Chu Fengmian could stand on equal footing with him was because of this secret technique. If it wasn't for this secret technique, 10,000 Chu Fengmians would have died in his hands. You talk too much. You only need to know that you're just an ant in front of me. Chu Fengmian sneered when he heard the great exalted lord's words. What secret technique? The soaring serpent bloodline was an opportunity that Chu Fengmian had obtained through untold hardships. Of course, it was his strength. The soaring serpent transformation lasted for less than half of a minute. Chu Fengmian was confident that he could defeat the great exalted lord. This represented Chu Fengmian's strength. No matter where one was, strength was respected. It was the same no matter how one obtained his strength. Tear! Chu Fengmian roared and the power of the heaven-tearing claw increased. The golden dragon claw swept across. Chapter 1108. Is this still a monarch? A monarch who can contend with quasi-emperors. This is too terrifying. Since when did such a demonic genius appear in the ancient Fiend continent? I heard that many of the geniuses of the 8 royal clans can contend with quasi-emperors while in the immortal realm. However, they can barely do so, unable to reach this step. Since when did such a person appear in the ancient Snake Empire? Even in the Divine Dragon Empire, I have never heard of such a genius. The ancient Snake Merchant Association's disciples normally interacted with countless major characters. They knew far more than ordinary people. Martial emperors were like ants. However, there were still people below quasi-emperor who could contend with quasi-emperors. Some of the geniuses of the 8 royal clans were rumored to be able to do so. The 8 royal clans had noble bloodlines, and they were dozens of times stronger than cultivators of the same cultivation. Furthermore, with their secret techniques, they could contend with quasi-emperors for a short time. However, they could only contend with quasi-emperors. In other words, they could exchange a few moves with quasi-emperors. As for whether the quasi-emperors were serious or not, that was another matter. How could Chu Fengmian before them be contending with quasi-emperors? He was suppressing quasi-emperors. What kind of trouble did I provoke for the ancient Snake Merchant Association? Mahogany knelt on the ground. Right now, his intestines were green with regret. If he had stood on Chu Fengmian's side at the start, young Master Lei would have hated him. However, this hatred would have only caused his relationship with the Lei clan to turn cold. It would not have hurt him deeply. To Mahogany, this was just a matter of face. At that time, if he had managed to rope in Chu Fengmian, it would be no different from roping in a quasi-emperor. If a quasi-emperor was willing to join the ancient Snake Merchant Association, that quasi-emperor would definitely hold a high position in the ancient Snake Merchant Association. Not to mention the ancient Snake Merchant Association, any faction would want to rope in a quasi-emperor. Although the ancient Snake Merchant Association might not be able to rope in a quasi-emperor, it would at least be enough to form a good relationship with Chu Fengmian. Establishing a good relationship with a quasi-emperor was a great thing. However, Mahogany had ruined all of this. Mahogany could never have imagined that Chu Fengmian possessed the strength of a quasi-emperor. This surpassed everyone's understanding. The same was true for the 3 consecrators kneeling on the ground. If they knew that Chu Fengmian had such strength, they would have agreed to Chu Fengmian's request. At this point, they could only look at the Great Sovereign with anticipation. As long as the Great Sovereign was able to suppress Chu Fengmian, today's matter would be resolved easily. But now, the one being chased was the Great Exalted. The Great Supremacy's figure shuttled back and forth in the ancient Snake Merchant Association's territory, while a golden dragon claw was chasing after him. Still trying to stall for time? Chu Fengmian looked at the Great Exalted Lord and sneered. He naturally knew what the Great Exalted Lord was thinking. No matter what secret technique it was, it wouldn't last for long. Half a minute, 1 minute, 2 minutes at most, it would dissipate. After all, forcing one's body to withstand dozens of times the power would cause immense damage to one's body every minute and every second. It wouldn't last for too long. As long as Chu Fengmian wasn't strengthened by the soaring serpent transformation, the Great Exalted Lord could easily defeat him with a wave of his hand. Of course, Chu Fengmian knew what the Great Exalted Lord was thinking, so he naturally wouldn't let him have his way. There were still 20 seconds left for the soaring serpent transformation, but Chu Fengmian didn't want to delay any longer. Tianlong transformation. Another aura erupted from Chu Fengmian's back. This aura wasn't any weaker than the soaring serpent shadow behind Chu Fengmian. This time around, it was a dragon. It was the most ancient dragon, the first dragon in the world, the ancestor of all dragons, the primogenitor sky dragon. SSS. The moment the ancestral heavenly dragon appeared, the entire place fell silent. The faces of the ancient Snake Merchant Association's disciples were filled with despair. They were able to sense that the power of the primordial celestial dragon was not inferior to the soaring serpent from before. Chu Fengmian's secret technique hadn't ended yet, but he could still use it a second time? No, it's impossible. How can you use two secret techniques at the same time? The power of these two secret techniques is completely different. It should be enough to make your body explode. Even a quasi-emperor can't do it. How can you do it? The great exalted lord roared crazily as he dodged. A quasi-emperor can't do it, but it doesn't mean that I can't do it. Stop hiding. Jianwang's secret technique, Heaven and Earth Seal. Chu Fengmian roared. Behind him, Jianwang also roared at the same time. As they roared, the surrounding space started to solidify. Heaven and Earth Seal. The Xiantian power represented by Jianwang was the power of space. Chu Fengmian could use this power to tear the space apart. He could also use this power to seal the space. Originally, Chu Fengmian had been using Tianlong transformation continuously. However, the great exalted lord's speed was too troublesome. A quasi-emperor's strength wasn't only reflected in the aspect of strength. The great exalted lord's speed, body and vitality were 100 times stronger than old ancestor Wu. Chu Fengmian couldn't catch him in a short time. Chu Fengmian naturally didn't want to delay any longer. It would be difficult to deal with the great exalted lord if the soaring serpent transformation ended. Without the power of the soaring serpent transformation, Chu Fengmian's strength would be inferior to that of a quasi-emperor. It would be very difficult for him to fight across this gap. Chu Fengmian used Tianlong transformation to make a prompt decision. He didn't want to give the great exalted lord any chance. The space around him solidified. This space was even harder than a spiritual weapon. The great exalted lord couldn't break the space around him even though he used countless secret techniques. Tear! Seizing the opportunity, Chu Fengmian slashed his claw towards the great exalted lord. The great exalted lord's body was strengthened by the slaughter god's shadow, and the slaughter god's shadow was torn in half. At the same time, the great exalted lord's spiritual energy rapidly weakened. His strength had fallen to the weakest point. Kill! Chu Fengmian didn't want to give the great exalted lord any chance to breathe. Since the great exalted lord used a killing move to deal with Chu Fengmian naturally wouldn't be lenient. Another battle dragon claw condensed and aimed at the great exalted lord. Young Master Chu, please be lenient. My servant is ignorant. Young Master Chu, you don't have to be so angry. Rumble. All of a sudden, an arm stretched out from the void. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but feel astonished. The space around him was sealed by Tianlong's power. How could it be broken by someone? Chapter 1109. An expert. Every hair on Chu Fengmian's body stood on end. He spread out his spiritual sense to observe every movement in the surroundings. This mysterious expert was able to break the seal of Tianlong transformation. This meant that this person was much stronger than the great sovereign. A quasi-emperor? Or was he a true emperor? I thought that the ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce only had the great sovereign and a quasi-emperor, which was enough to suppress everything. How could there be another expert? Chu Fengmian wasn't nervous. He didn't need to think to know that this person was an expert of the ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce. Now that Chu Fengmian had made a mess of the ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce, this person was probably an enemy to him. Young Master Chu, you don't need to be so nervous. This old man already knows about what happened today. It's just a misunderstanding. The ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce has always valued peace when doing business. This misunderstanding has been resolved, so it's nothing. Young Master Chu, please let go of the great sovereign first. The mysterious voice sounded again. Chu Fengmian thought for a moment and frowned, but he still let go of the great sovereign. Now that this mysterious powerhouse had appeared, it was obviously unrealistic for Chu Fengmian to kill the great supremacy in front of him. However, Chu Fengmian was careful and secretly planted a fire seed in the great sovereign's body. It was a fire seed condensed from pure yang heavenly fire. Pure yang heavenly fire wasn't a flame that could be controlled by humans. Only those with innate fire-attributed divine bodies could control it. Chu Fengmian could control it at any time after condensing the divine body of ice and fire. As long as Chu Fengmian willed it, the fire seed would erupt. Even if the great sovereign was a quasi-emperor, he would still be burned to ashes by the pure yang heavenly fire. Chu Fengmian wasn't afraid of the ancient snake chamber of commerce causing trouble. Young Master Chu is indeed a smart person. The mysterious voice spoke again. From the tone of this voice, there was a hint of relief. It seemed that the fish dyeing break was not what he wanted. At the same time, a middle-aged man slowly walked out from beside the great sovereign. When Chu Fengmian let go of the great sovereign, he also withdrew the power of Jianwang transformation and soaring snake transformation. Chu Fengmian couldn't waste these two powers. They were his best trump cards against the quasi-emperor, so he had to keep them. Who are you? Chu Fengmian glanced at the middle-aged man. His eyes revealed some pressure. Chu Fengmian could tell that this man was still a quasi-emperor and had yet to become a true sovereign. However, his strength was completely different from a quasi-emperor like the Great Supremacy. Humans were divided into different grades, and so were quasi-emperors. For example, the heavenly demon supremacy had just become a quasi-emperor and was considered the weakest among quasi-emperors. The great exalted lord should be of the same level as the Hua clan's first elder that Chu Fengmian fought before, both being small perfection quasi-emperors. After that, there were great perfection quasi-emperors and peak quasi-emperors. Everyone's cultivation was the same. Small perfection, great perfection, and peak quasi-emperors were still differentiated by strength. This middle-aged man before Chu Fengmian probably surpassed great perfection, reaching the level of a peak quasi-emperor. That was why Chu Fengmian felt such immense pressure. This person was someone who was truly close to becoming a sovereign. He was just one step away from becoming a quasi-emperor and becoming a true sovereign. This person would be even more difficult to deal with than 10 great supremacies. Right now, Chu Fengmian was secretly accumulating spiritual energy. As long as he felt that something was wrong, he would erupt with his full strength and immediately flee. As long as he left the ancient Snake Merchant Association, even if he changed his identity, a true sovereign would not be able to find him. President? Greetings, President. Before that middle-aged man could speak, the ancient Snake Merchant Association's flute disciples all knelt on the ground and greeted him respectfully when they saw him. Even the Great Supremacy was no exception. Although he did not kneel, he was also extremely respectful. The ancient Snake Merchant Association's president? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. He had already guessed the answer. For such a person to have a superior status to the Great Supremacy, he could only be the ancient Snake Merchant Association's president. The ancient Snake Merchant Association's president was rumored to be a mysterious person. Today, he suddenly appeared. Could it be that this matter had blown up and this person had no choice but to appear? However, it made sense. Chu Fengmian had almost killed the Great Supremacy just now. If the ancient Snake Merchant Association's president did not act, it would really be a disaster. The fall of a boundary emperor was enough to shake the entire ancient snake empire. The ancient Snake Merchant Association's president, Ouyang Li, the middle-aged man, Ouyang Li, said. President Ouyang, this person is too much. He injured the ancient Snake Merchant Association's disciples and even forced us to kneel. This is a great humiliation. President Ouyang, please uphold justice. Young Master Lei, who was kneeling on the ground, shouted loudly when he saw Ouyang Li. It was as if he had found his savior. He hated Chu Fengmian to the core. Now that Ouyang Li was here, it would be easy for him to kill Chu Fengmian. In the Imperial City, except for the mysterious ancient Snake Emperor, even the 8 great sovereign families' quasi-emperors might not be Ouyang Li's match. We'll talk about young Master Lei later. Men, take young Master Lei away. Ouyang Li didn't even look at young Master Lei. He just ordered the men beside him. Two old ancestors of the ancient Snake Merchant Association stepped forward and took young Master Lei away. Young Master Lei wanted to say something, but he shut his mouth when he saw Ouyang Li's cold eyes. He dared to be arrogant in front of Rosewood, the vice president, and even the great reverend. However, he didn't dare to do the same in front of Ouyang Li. This was strength. All arrogance had to be restrained in front of an absolute expert. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered when he saw this. What was this Ouyang Li planning? It seemed like he didn't intend to continue the battle today. If not, he would have directly attacked Chu Fengmian in front of young Master Lei. He could have used this opportunity to gain the favor of the Lei clan. Now that everyone has left, it's time to settle the grudge between you and the ancient Snake Merchant Association. This isn't a grudge, it's just a small misunderstanding. This is a blood crystal. It's 10 times purer than a bloodstone. I heard that young Master Chu needs a bloodstone, so I'll give it to you as compensation. Ouyang Li suddenly flipped his hand and a blood-red crystal appeared in his palm. He then handed it to Chu Fengmian. Chapter 11:10. Today's conflict was caused by the servants. You all, go and apologize to young Master Chu. After handing over the blood crystal, Ouyang Li looked at the great exalted lord, the 3 consecrators, and the vice president of Ghost God sect. Hearing the word apologize, their eyes were filled with anger, but they didn't dare to disobey Ouyang Li's order. They could only walk towards Chu Fengmian. Forget it. There's no need for an apology. I'll take this blood crystal. Chu Fengmian said casually. The great exalted lord, the 3 consecrators, and the ghost god vice president were all itching to kill Chu Fengmian. Their hatred for Chu Fengmian seeped into their bones. Their apology was meaningless. However, this blood crystal was of great use to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian knew a little about this blood crystal from Lei Yan's memories. The blood crystal was even purer than the bloodstone. It was also produced in the blood world, but it was in the heart of the blood world, where it was even more dangerous. Even Lei Yan didn't dare to go to the blood world. He only dared to look for bloodstones outside. A blood crystal was 1,000 times more valuable than a bloodstone. If Chu Fengmian wanted to buy this blood crystal, it would cost him 50 billion supreme-grade spirit stones, and that was under the condition that the ancient Snake Merchant Guild was willing to sell it. A treasure like the blood crystal could be sold to any power, and it would be enough to establish a good relationship with that power. Now, he had actually given it to Chu Fengmian. Regardless of Ouyang Li's intentions, Chu Fengmian took it away. What he needed most now was to increase his cultivation. No matter what Ouyang Li was planning, as long as Chu Fengmian was strong enough, all his schemes would be meaningless. Chu Fengmian could defeat the great exalted lord with the strength of the soaring serpent transformation and the Jianwang transformation. If he stepped into the Empyrean realm, he might have a chance to fight against Ouyang Li. I can see Vice President Ouyang's sincerity. Tell me, how do you want to resolve today's matter? Chu Fengmian pulled a chair and sat down. After a series of battles, Chu Fengmian needed to rest. Although he had unlimited spiritual energy with his divine veins, his mind was still tired. Today's matter is our ancient Snake Merchant Guild's fault. Young Master Chu, don't you need bloodstones? Our ancient Snake Merchant Association has a total of 70,000 bloodstones. Why don't we sell them all to Mr. Chu? Ouyang Li glanced at Chu Fengmian and said. At the same time, our ancient snake trading company also plans to do business with young Master Chu. Doesn't young Master Chu also want information about the world of fresh blood? The ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce also has some secrets related to the world of fresh blood. If young Master Chu needs it, we can make a deal. Oh? Hearing Ouyang Li's words, Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with a strange light. Ouyang Li's conditions were so profound that it was beyond Chu Fengmian's expectation. However, these 70,000 bloodstones were of great use to Chu Fengmian. It wasn't easy to obtain a large number of bloodstones in the world of blood. If possible, Chu Fengmian wanted to collect enough bloodstones from the outside. Sure, I'll buy all 70,000 bloodstones. Chu Fengmian nodded and waved his hand, causing a river of spirit stones to appear. All of them were sagely-grade spirit stones, and they flew toward Ouyangli, 50 million top-grade spirit stones for one bloodstone. I'll take all of them. Ouyangli didn't refuse these spirit stones. He moved in the air and collected all the bloodstones. As for the rest of the deal, all of a sudden, Ouyangli waved his spiritual energy in the air. The surrounding room started to spin, and in an instant, they arrived at another secret chamber. President Ouyang, what kind of deal do you want to make? I need a large number of bloodstones. If you have more bloodstones, I can buy them with money. Chu Fengmian sized up the surroundings of the secret chamber. After confirming that there was no danger nearby, he looked at Ouyangli and slowly opened his mouth. Of course, if you have higher-grade blood crystals, I can still buy them. Spirit stones won't be a problem. Chu Fengmian needed a large number of bloodstones. Not to mention 50 million each, he could buy them even if they were 100 million each. The wealth Chu Fengmian could gather every day was more than 100 billion. However, Chu Fengmian didn't know what Ouyangli was planning to do. If I'm not wrong, young Master Chu wants to buy so much information about the bloody world because you want to go there personally. Ouyangli didn't answer Chu Fengmian's question. Instead, he suddenly said, "That's right." Chu Fengmian nodded and didn't hide anything. He bought so much information about the bloody world. There was no need to guess his purpose. It was obvious at a glance. There was no point in hiding it, so it was better to say it openly. I wonder if young Master Chu has heard about the treasured land of the bloody world? Ouyangli asked again. Treasured land? Chu Fengmian's eyes suddenly changed as he said coldly. Your ancient snake chamber of commerce knows about the treasured land of the bloody world? Chu Fengmian had heard about the treasured land from Lei Yan's memory. The bloody world was a huge world. It could be said that it was bigger than the wasteland. It wasn't difficult to find bloodstones when they were scattered. However, it was like finding a needle in a haystack to find a large amount of bloodstones. However, there were some places in the bloody world that were able to produce large amounts of bloodstones due to some special reasons. This kind of place was known as a treasure ground. Not only could one obtain a large amount of bloodstones in a treasure ground, but one could also obtain blood crystals. However, these treasured lands were distributed in different places in the bloody world. Moreover, they were extremely rare. Generally speaking, it was almost impossible to find a treasured land. One could only rely on luck. Chu Fengmian entered the bloody world to try his luck. He wanted to see if he could find a few treasured lands to obtain large amounts of bloodstones. According to Ouyangli's words, the ancient snake chamber of commerce knew about the existence of a treasured land? That's right. Our ancient snake chamber of commerce has received information about a treasured land. Moreover, other than our ancient snake chamber of commerce, no other forces know about the treasured land. The blood crystal that I gave to young Master Chu was produced in this treasured land. How much wealth does it cost to obtain information about this treasured land? Chu Fengmian asked directly. Chapter 11:11. A treasure ground would contain at least a few thousand bloodstones. Moreover, a treasure ground that could produce blood crystals was considered huge in the treasure ground. The treasure grounds in the bloody world were divided into 4 grades. The 4th grade was the highest, and the treasure ground that could produce blood crystals was at least of the 2nd grade. There would be at least tens of thousands of bloodstones. Finding this treasure ground would yield a large amount of bloodstones. In addition to the 70,000 bloodstones that Chu Fengmian bought from the ancient snake chamber of commerce, Chu Fengmian could improve his bloodline and break through to the celestial realm. The news of this treasure ground was extremely important to Chu Fengmian. Our ancient snake chamber of commerce will not sell the news of this treasure ground. Ouyangli suddenly kept Chu Fengmian in suspense. This time, this old man wants to make a deal with young Master Chu. A deal? Chu Fengmian frowned. If he could directly use his wealth to buy the news of this treasure ground, it would be the best choice for Chu Fengmian. However, it didn't seem that simple now. However, this was a treasure land after all. It represented an almost endless stream of wealth. The bloodstones in the treasure land could not be extracted all at once. One only needed to wait for 10 or 20 years for the treasure land to produce new bloodstones. Therefore, a treasure ground was almost priceless. Even if Chu Fengmian was willing to pay a high price for it, the ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce might not be willing to sell it. What deal? Our ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce is willing to tell young Master Chu the news of this treasure ground for free. Ouyang Li slowly said. However, there is a condition. Young Master Chu must give half of the bloodstones that you obtain in the treasure ground to the ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce. So simple? Chu Fengmian couldn't help but ask. This condition was simply too simple. Only half? Most likely, other warriors would be willing to take 10%. After all, as long as they reached a treasure land, it would not be difficult to obtain thousands of bloodstones. Even if it was half, it would be a great profit. One should know that most cultivators wouldn't be able to obtain so many bloodstones after entering the bloody world once. Lei Yan, for example, risked his life to obtain less than 1,000 bloodstones. Of course, this treasure ground isn't as peaceful as it looks. It's an unexplored treasure ground. Ouyang Li smiled when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. In this treasure land, there is a group of blood snakes unique to the world of fresh blood. They are not easy to deal with, so we plan to ask young Master Chu to deal with this group of blood snakes. Blood snakes. Hearing this, Chu Fengmian understood a little. Chu Fengmian knew that due to the unique environment of the blood world, some strange demonic beasts were born. The blood snake was one of them. Moreover, the blood snake clan was extremely difficult to deal with among the demonic beasts in the blood world. This was because the blood snake clan lived in groups. There might be thousands or even tens of thousands of blood snakes in a group. Even ants could kill an elephant. Moreover, the weakest blood snake was at the life and death realm. There were many blood snakes that had stepped onto the life and death steps and became old ancestors. There were even rumors that there were quasi-emperor blood snakes in the blood world. When ordinary martial artists entered the world of blood, they would take a detour if they encountered the blood snake clan. It was no wonder that Ouyang Li had offered such generous conditions. This treasure ground was actually occupied by the blood serpent tribe. In order to obtain the bloodstones, one must first eliminate the blood serpent tribe. What level is the leader of the blood serpent tribe? Chu Fengmian asked cautiously. This blood serpent tribe was definitely not weak. Otherwise, the ancient Snake Merchant Association would have eliminated the blood serpent tribe themselves. At that time, the wealth of this treasure ground would belong to them. Why would they let Chu Fengmian take advantage of it? Evidently, this blood serpent tribe was extremely troublesome for the ancient Snake Merchant Association. It was a hot potato, which was why Chu Fengmian was sent to deal with it. Quasi-Emperor. The leader of this blood serpent tribe has the strength of an early quasi-emperor. Ouyang Li replied. A quasi-emperor blood serpent tribe leader? This is a huge blood serpent tribe. Could it be that President Ouyang wants me to deal with tens of thousands of blood serpents alone? Hearing Ouyang Li's words, Chu Fengmian couldn't help but sneer. Sure enough, this matter wasn't as simple as it seemed. The quasi-emperor blood serpent tribe leader was a quasi-emperor. Even if he had just entered the quasi-emperor realm, Chu Fengmian would still have to use his full strength to deal with him. This was especially true in the blood world, where existences like the blood serpent tribe had a unique advantage. If the great sovereign lord were to deal with the leader of the blood serpent tribe who had just entered the quasi-emperor realm, he would only have a 50% chance of winning. Moreover, apart from the leader of the blood serpent tribe, the tens of thousands of blood serpents under his command were also a big problem. If they joined forces, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be able to barge in alone. Chu Fengmian would most likely become a meal for the blood serpent tribe before he could obtain the bloodstones. Young Master Chu, don't worry. Of course, you won't be dealing with the blood serpent tribe alone. You only need to deal with the leader of the ancient snake tribe. As for the others, the ancient Snake Merchant Association has recently recruited many demon gods. We only lack a commander. Young Master Chu can go with them. You only need to deal with the leader of the Blood Serpent tribe. As for the others, they will naturally help you deal with them. Ouyang Li said. Young Master Chu, since you've killed the leader of the Blood Serpent tribe, we can raise the conditions again. We'll give you 10% more, and the Ancient Snake Merchant Association will only ask for 40% of the bloodstones you obtained in the treasure ground. What do you think? Ouyang Li hurriedly said, as if he was afraid that Chu Fengmian wouldn't agree. All right, I agree. Chu Fengmian thought for a moment and immediately agreed. It wasn't impossible for Chu Fengmian to kill the leader of the Blood Serpent tribe who had just entered the Quasi-Emperor realm. The most important thing was Ouyang Li's condition. 60% bloodstones was definitely a huge amount of wealth. Moreover, the Blood Serpent tribe usually occupied a place where there were treasures of heaven and earth. There were obviously other hidden treasures in this treasure ground, which was why the Blood Serpent tribe had entrenched themselves there. All the treasures of heaven and earth gathered in the blood world were similar to the bloodstones. They could enhance one's bloodline and were of great use to Chu Fengmian. He had to obtain them no matter what. Alright, young Master Chu is straightforward. Here's the information about the treasure ground. Ouyang Li laughed when he saw Chu Fengmian agree. At the same time, he pointed his finger and a jade talisman flew over. Chapter 11-12. This land of treasures was actually at the edge of the world of blood, which saved him a lot of trouble. Chu Fengmian took a look and found that this land of treasures was actually at the edge of the world of blood. This was a small piece of news for him. Generally, land of treasures was gathered at the heart of the world of blood. Therefore, most warriors who entered would choose to go to the heart of the world of blood to obtain large amounts of bloodstones. The possibility of encountering other warriors at the edge would be much lower and the news would not be leaked. Here are 70,000 bloodstones. Young Master Chu, you can check them. Ouyang Li moved his palm and an empty ring flew towards Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian opened the empty ring and saw that it was densely packed with bloodstones. There were a total of 70,000 bloodstones, not one less. Okay. Chu Fengmian saw these bloodstones and immediately wanted to refine them, but he quickly suppressed his excitement. Although refining these 70,000 bloodstones was enough to increase Chu Fengmian's strength, it was not enough to transform his strength completely. Therefore, Chu Fengmian kept these bloodstones for now. He needed to gather at least 100,000 bloodstones and devour them together to upgrade his bloodline and break through to the next realm. Only then would Chu Fengmian truly be reborn. Young Master Chu, when do you plan to depart? The warriors and demon immortals recruited by our ancient snake chamber of commerce are already waiting and can depart at any time. Ouyang Li looked at Chu Fengmian and asked. No need to wait, let's depart now. Chu Fengmian said directly. He would not be able to refine these 70,000 bloodstones in a short time. It would be better to go to the world of blood and find more bloodstones to devour in one go to upgrade his bloodline and break through to the next realm. After encountering Ouyang Li, Chu Fengmian became more nervous. Even if he used the power of the Soaring Serpent transformation and Jianwang transformation, he would not be able to defeat Ouyang Li. He would have to pay a great price to escape from Ouyang Li's hands. Originally, Chu Fengmian thought that even if he could not defeat a quasi-emperor, he would at least be able to escape unscathed. However, after encountering Ouyang Li, Chu Fengmian was clear. The quasi-emperor realm was still huge. Ouyang Li's strength was more terrifying than 10 great exalted lords. Moreover, Chu Fengmian could easily defeat a great exalted. Great exalted was careless and did not put Chu Fengmian. Otherwise, even if Chu Fengmian could defeat the great exalted lord, he would need to use more means and time. A quasi-emperor was not that easy to defeat. Even the current Chu Fengmian might not be able to kill the great exalted lord. Killing a quasi-emperor was much more difficult than defeating one. After all, the fight between Chu Fengmian and the great exalted lord was just a battle of pride and not a true battle to the death, of life and death. Of life. Of life. But now that Chu Fengmian had used up all his trump cards, he still wasn't a match for Ouyang Li. At the very least, Chu Fengmian needed to upgrade his bloodline and break through to the Empyrean realm. Only then could he truly contend with Ouyang Li. Ouyang Li waved his hand and opened a teleportation array in front of Chu Fengmian. "Young Master Chu, please follow me." Ouyang Li took the lead and stepped into the teleportation array. Chu Fengmian followed closely behind. Chu Fengmian felt that he had crossed a large area and arrived at a unique place in the imperial capital. After leaving the teleportation array, the smell of blood assaulted his senses. Chu Fengmian opened his eyes and saw a 100-meter-tall spatial crack in front of him. The smell of blood was coming from the spatial crack. Seems like this is the entrance to the world of blood. Chu Fengmian could no longer tell how many types of blood essence had fused together. Every year, more than 10 million cultivators died in the world of blood. The blood essence of these cultivators would become a part of the world of blood. Therefore, it was impossible to tell who the blood essence belonged to. 5 cultivators stood in front of the spatial crack. They seemed to be waiting for something. They were chatting while waiting. The 5 cultivators were all old ancestors of the immortal realm. They hadn't just broken through. They were at least at the level of the vice president of Redwood and the vice president of Ghost Deity. Their bodies also contained a murderous aura. It was unknown just how many living beings they had killed in the past. Just this murderous aura alone was enough to make people back off just by looking at it. They stopped talking when they saw Ouyang Li coming out. They walked over to him. "President Ouyang, how long do we have to wait?" Among the 5, the oldest man with a scar on his face, who looked to be in his 40s, stepped forward and asked hurriedly. "We've been waiting for a few days. If we don't depart now, I'm afraid that the treasured land will be discovered by others." "Don't worry, old ancestor Wang Dao. The last person for this trip has been chosen." Ouyang Li's face was calm. He looked at Chu Fengmian beside him and said, "Young Master Chu Fengmian is the last person on this trip. Young Master Chu will be the leader of this expedition. He will go with you." "Huh? This brat is the last person?" Old ancestor Wang Dao glanced at Chu Fengmian. His eyes suddenly turned cold when he saw Chu Fengmian's cultivation. "We've waited for so long for a brat in the Fate Realm?" "President Ouyang, although we don't know where this brat came from, you should take him with you. A brat in the Fate Realm is going to die in the world of fresh blood. He'll even be a hindrance." "That's right. Let's not talk about taking him with us. How can a brat in the Fate Realm be our leader? He's just a brat in the Fate Realm. What right does he have?" A middle-aged man standing next to him also said. "We agree that Brother Wang is the leader. However, it's impossible to let this brat in the Fate Realm ride on our heads. If President Ouyang insists on having his way, we, the 5 ancestors of Divine Saber, will not accept this mission." Another supreme old ancestor said coldly. Chapter 11-13. Although the remaining 2 patriarchs did not say anything, their eyes had already expressed their attitude. They were supreme ancestors of the Neverwither realm. Naturally, none of them were willing to be overshadowed by a Destiny Realm brat. "Young Master Chu, these 5 supreme ancestors are called the 5 ancestors of Divine Saber. They are Ancestor Wang Dao, Ancestor Forging Saber, Ancestor Piercing Saber, Ancestor Annihilating Saber, and Ancestor Floating Saber. Although they are not from the major sects, they are all saber cultivators. They grew up together and are all unruly people. You will have to take action if you want them to work for you." Ouyang Li did not speak, but quietly transmitted his voice to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian understood the meaning of being obedient. If he wanted to subdue these 5 supreme ancestors and use them for himself, then Chu Fengmian must show his strength. Otherwise, it would be difficult to convince them. 5 ancestors of Divine Saber? What's that? I've never heard of it. Chu Fengmian took a step forward, glanced at them and said coldly. "Since I'm the leader this time, those who are disobedient, step forward. If anyone dares to be disobedient in the world of fresh blood, Don't blame me for not showing mercy. The 5 ancestors of Divine Saber were arrogant and unruly people. From the murderous aura around them, it was obvious that they had gone through many life and death battles to get to where they were today. If Chu Fengmian was a quasi-emperor, they would not dare to be so unruly. However, Chu Fengmian was only in the destiny realm. Of course, he would not be able to convince them. Anyway, if they were not convinced, Chu Fengmian would beat them into submission. Young man, how arrogant of you. We, the 5 ancestors of Divine Saber, are famous in the ancient Serpent Empire. No one has ever dared to speak to us like this. You want to be the leader? Then I'd like to see what means you have to be the leader. Ancestor Wang Dao said in exasperation when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. The 5 ancestors of Divine Saber were so famous in the ancient Serpent Empire that even the 8 sovereign families would not dare to say that they had not heard of them. However, if they joined forces, they would be able to contend against some quasi-emperors. Therefore, even quasi-emperors would not choose to start a conflict with them. This was especially so when they were all loose cultivators. They had no ties and were ferocious. They did not fear anyone. Killing a ruler was not a big deal for them. Brother Wang is going to make his move? Just teach him a lesson. After all, President Ouyang is here. It's not good to kill him. Since he's so arrogant, give him a slap and let him reflect on himself. Of course, if he still has some strength left, we can bring him into the world of fresh blood and use him as a meat shield. The rest of the progenitors burst out laughing. Don't worry, I won't kill this kid. The patriarch of Wang Dao laughed out loud. A trace of disdain flashed across his eyes. Brat, lest you say that I'm bullying you, take 3 moves from me, and we'll let you be the leader today. What do you say? 3 moves? Chu Fengmian shook his head when he heard Wang Dao's words. 1 move is enough to defeat you. Damn it, how arrogant. The patriarch of Wang Dao roared. As a supreme progenitor, how could he tolerate Chu Fengmian's words? Suddenly, a spiritual light flashed in his hand, and a mountain-splitting saber was formed. Heaven and Earth Saber Splitter. The patriarch of Wang Dao attacked. In an instant, the saber was unsheathed, and a sharp saber light slashed at Chu Fengmian. The attack was made of pure strength without any tricks, and it was almost flawless unless it was countered by brute force. Clearly, if Chu Fengmian could not take this attack head-on, he would definitely lose. How dare you call this saber technique a divine saber? Break it! Chu Fengmian did not look at it. With a shift of his mind, the battle dragon claw formed above his head and slammed down on the saber light. The sharp saber light was shattered the moment it came in contact with the battle dragon claw. At the same time, the battle dragon claw swept out and hit the patriarch of Wang Dao's chest. Bam! Grand Ancestor Wang Dao's body was sent flying back dozens of times. When he finally stabilized himself, a claw mark could be seen on his chest. Behind the claw mark, there seemed to be some kind of soft armor. However, the soft armor was already broken and could not be worn again. It had lost its power. Brother Wang? What's going on? Brother Wang, are you okay? The other Divine Saber progenitors hurried over. Kid, how dare you injure Brother Wang? Kill him. Anyone who dares to injure the Divine Saber 5 progenitors must die. That's right, kill him. How dare he challenge the authority of the Divine Saber 5 progenitors? The Forging Saber progenitor, Bayonet progenitor, and Extinction Saber progenitor spoke at the same time. Their eyes were filled with murderous intent as they looked at Chu Fengmian. The 3 of them attacked at the same time, and 3 saber lights slashed at Chu Fengmian. What? Want to join in? I'll fight as many as you come. Facing the 3 saber lights, Chu Fengmian did not show any signs of nervousness. Instead, he smiled faintly. With a thought, the battle dragon claw formed again above Chu Fengmian's head. If anyone dared to attack Chu Fengmian, the battle dragon claw would fall mercilessly. Everyone, stop! At the moment of the clash, a sudden roar shattered the saber lights and the battle dragon claw at the same time. Chu Fengmian felt the spiritual energy in his body suddenly go berserk with this roar. What a powerful force! Just a roar and it's already so powerful? Chu Fengmian was shocked. Although he had felt Ouyang Li's power before, this was the first time he saw him in action. Just a roar was enough to shatter the battle dragon claw. Although Chu Fengmian did not use his full strength, this roar alone was enough to defeat the 5 progenitors even if they worked together. It seems that I have to be careful when facing Ouyang Li, otherwise, with his strength, if he sneak attacks me with lightning speed, I'll be seriously injured even if I don't die. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. At the same time, he withdrew the spiritual energy in his body. However, this was only on the surface. If Ouyang Li really intended to attack Chu Fengmian could instantly counterattack. A Pete quasi-emperor at that, given his dignity, would not launch a sneak attack. However, there were exceptions to everything. Which cultivator who could become a quasi-emperor was not a vicious and merciless person? This Ouyang Li was clearly a person who hid a knife behind a smile. They had to be wary. When the 5 progenitors saw Ouyang Li attack, they put away their spiritual sabers and the spiritual energy in their bodies gradually dissipated. After all, this was a quasi-emperor. The dignity of a quasi-emperor was not to be challenged. This is just a spar. 5 progenitors, you should have understood Master Chu's strength. Chapter 11-14. When the powerless patriarchs of the 5 divine saber patriarchs heard this, their eyes flickered, and they began to think. Although they were aware of Chu Fengmian's strength, they were still unwilling to allow the 5 ancestors of the divine saber to be ordered around by someone else. We are aware of young Master Chu's strength. Please forgive us for our previous offense. Ancestor Wang Dao was the first to speak as he slowly recovered from his injuries. We are willing to follow young Master Chu's lead in this operation to the bloody world. We are willing to let young Master Chu be our leader. The other divine saber ancestors expressed their loyalty when they heard Ancestor Wang Dao's words. However, they were still unconvinced. The divine saber group 5 had always worked as a team. Even if Ancestor Wang Dao was no match for Chu Fengmian, they might be able to defeat him if they worked together. After all, they were saber cultivators and had also cultivated a joint attack technique that allowed them to contend against quasi-emperors. Chu Fengmian knew that the 5 ancestors of the divine saber were unconvinced, but he had no intention of subduing them directly. In Chu Fengmian's opinion, a few supreme ancestors were like ants. If it weren't for the fact that he needed them to deal with the blood serpent tribe, Chu Fengmian wouldn't have bothered dealing with them. Alright, let's get this straight. I'll kill anyone who dares to disobey my orders when we get to the bloody world. Chu Fengmian said bluntly, completely ignoring the anger of the 5 divine saber group 5. Of course. Since we want young Master Chu to be our leader, of course we'll listen to young Master Chu. Ancestor Wang Dao said with a smile. He no longer looked arrogant, as if he was really obeying Chu Fengmian. Let's go then. Chu Fengmian nodded and took the lead to enter the bloody world. Brother Wang? We're letting this kid be our leader? You may be able to tolerate this, but we can't. He's just a heavenly mandate realm kid. What right does he have to ride on our heads? Seeing Chu Fengmian enter the blood world, Ancestor Bayonet grumbled. That's right. Even you, Brother Wang, can't let us be ordered around by a mere destiny realm emperor. If you're bent on supporting that kid, don't blame us for being ruthless. I won't go into the world of fresh blood this time. The saber-forging ancestor said angrily. Usually, when those rulers saw them, which one of them was not respectful and reverent? They had never been like Chu Fengmian, who suppressed them. Recalling Chu Fengmian's words, the forefather couldn't wait to find a chance to kill him. Bayonet, forging blade. When have we of the 5 forging ancestors ever submitted to anyone? The only reason I made him captain was to coax him. Otherwise, when we get to the blood world, where would we find a scapegoat? Patriarch Wang Dao suddenly sneered. There are no dangers in the world of fresh blood. Whoever stands out will die. Doesn't this brat want to show off? Let's see how long he can be so arrogant. So Brother Wang is planning to let this brat be the scapegoat? Hearing Patriarch Wang Dao's words, the others nodded. We've been to the blood world before and know how dangerous it is. Indeed, if we're not careful, even the 5 of us might be injured. It's Xinghai who's going to be the scapegoat. But Brother Wang, is this brat really willing to be the scapegoat? What if he sends us to our deaths? The Flying Blade ancestor, who was the calmest among them, asked. Don't worry, this brat is just a brat. He's arrogant because of his powerful bloodline. Let's not fight him and just coax him. We're not afraid that he won't stick his neck out. Patriarch Wang Dao sneered. The 5 divine saber ancestors had been roaming the outside world for hundreds of years. They were all shrewd people. It would not be easy for them to deal with a brat. Listen to me. Let's go in quickly so that the brat won't be suspicious. Patriarch Wang Dao took the lead and entered the blood world, followed by the rest of the 5 divine saber ancestors. After the 5 divine saber ancestors and Chu Fengmian disappeared, a few figures suddenly appeared beside Ouyang Li. They were the vice president of Red Wood, the vice president of Ghost Deity, the Great Master and the others. President, is the news true? Are you really going to let this brat take advantage of this? The Great Master's eyes flickered as if he was thinking about it. The Divine Saber 5th ancestor was supposed to participate in this. They are just scapegoats. Even if they enter, they won't be able to occupy the treasure land. However, if this kid really kills the Blood Serpent leader, 60% of the treasure land's wealth will belong to him. You should know that the ancient Serpent Chamber of Commerce paid a huge price to obtain this information. Any information about a treasure land could be sold at a sky-high price. The ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce had paid a great price to obtain this information. Now, they were giving it to Chu Fengmian for free and even gave him 60% of the benefits. How could the Great Master not be angry? As a quasi-emperor, he was defeated by Chu Fengmian. Now, all he wanted to do was to take revenge on Chu Fengmian. He naturally did not want Chu Fengmian to get any benefits, 60% of the wealth. Do you really think that this brat can get 60% of the wealth? I'm afraid that he won't even be able to come out of the blood world. The faint smile on Ouyang Li's face disappeared and was replaced by a gloomy expression. This brat dares to cause trouble in our ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce. Does he really think that our ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce is easy to bully? Look, doesn't this brat look like the person that the He clan and Lei clan offered a reward for? President, are you talking about the mysterious demon god of the Dragon Clan? Hearing Ouyang Li's words, the Great Master and the others looked at each other and thought carefully. Suddenly, their faces changed. That's right. His strength is exactly like what the He clan and Lei clan said. I've heard that the He clan and Lei clan have offered a reward for killing this brat or providing information about this brat. Should we go and inform them? The vice president of the Redwood clan said hurriedly. I've already informed the He clan and Lei clan. If I'm not wrong, they should be waiting for him in the blood world. Ouyang Li said with a sinister smile. I thought that he was just a brat. I didn't expect him to be such a big fish. I've already negotiated with the He clan and Lei clan. They only want his life. As for the rest, they will belong to our ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce. His wealth is the same. No matter how many bloodstones he obtains, they will all belong to our ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce. Chapter 11:15. Someone is plotting against me? Chu Fengmian felt a chill run down his spine when he stepped into the world of blood. He could tell that someone was plotting against him. Given Chu Fengmian's current strength, he could vaguely sense that someone was plotting against him. However, he didn't know who it was that wanted to harm him. After all, Chu Fengmian had too many enemies. The 5 ancestors of Divine Saber and the Ancient Snake Merchant Association all hated him to the core. Chu Fengmian didn't believe that they would be so magnanimous as to not care about him. Even the He clan and the Lei clan would spare no effort to kill Chu Fengmian if they knew that he had come to the imperial capital. Chu Fengmian had too many enemies, so he couldn't figure out who it was. But it doesn't matter. As long as I obtain the bloodstones from the treasure ground and step into the celestial realm, even a quasi-emperor won't be able to do anything to me. Even if they dare to plot against me, I'll be able to unravel all their schemes. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. At the same time, he began to observe the world of blood in front of him. The world of blood was a small world of its own. Chu Fengmian glanced at it and saw that it was filled with blood qi. This blood qi had turned into a blood mist. Everywhere he looked was blood red, and there were constant screams from time to time. However, perhaps because this was the entrance to the world of blood, Chu Fengmian didn't see any bloodstones or traces of the fresh blood demons. It seemed that he would have to go deeper to find bloodstones. If bloodstones were so easy to obtain, they wouldn't be sold at such a shocking price. While Chu Fengmian was deep in thought, the 5 ancestors of Divine Saber had also stepped into the world of blood. They no longer looked at Chu Fengmian with hostility, as if they were really respectful to him. Young Master Chu, should we search for bloodstones first, or go straight to the treasure ground? Ancestor Wang Dao asked respectfully. Go straight to the treasure ground. Chu Fengmian said without hesitation. For Chu Fengmian, obtaining large amounts of bloodstones to upgrade his bloodline and break through to the next realm was the most important thing. Especially now that there were so many conspiracies, Chu Fengmian didn't want to waste any more time. Alright, we'll follow young Master Chu's orders. Forefather Forging Saber, Ancestor Bayonet, and the others nodded in agreement. There was no point in doing so. He simply followed the ancient Snake Merchant Guild's message and flew in the direction of the treasure land. The deeper he flew into the world of blood, the thicker the blood qi in the surroundings. Chu Fengmian had already encountered a few bloodstones along the way. These bloodstones were all floating in the air. If Chu Fengmian wanted to obtain them, he could easily absorb them. However, the quality of these bloodstones wasn't very high. They were filled with impurities. It seemed that the blood qi they condensed wasn't too pure. The closer the bloodstones were to the heart of the blood world, the purer and higher the grade. But it was better than nothing. To Chu Fengmian, every single bloodstone was important. He collected more than a dozen bloodstones along the way. The 5 ancestors of Divine Saber also collected a few bloodstones. Their expressions did not change much. After all, given their status, a few bloodstones were nothing to them. Roar! Just as Chu Fengmian was flying toward the treasured land, a roar suddenly rang out. A huge figure suddenly appeared in the blood mist ahead. It was a giant blood-red bull. The bull charged at Chu Fengmian. Young Master Chu, be careful. This is one of the blood beasts, the giant blood bull. Its brute force is extremely strong. Its strength is close to Ancestor Wu's level. I didn't expect to encounter such a monster as soon as we entered. It seems like there is indeed a treasured land nearby. Ancestor Wang Dao reminded from the side. Why don't you let us deal with it? After all, young Master Chu's cultivation realm is, Ancestor Bayonet said from the side. What? It's just a small giant blood bowl. It's nothing. There's no need for you to deal with it. Chu Fengmian snorted. With a thought, the battle dragon claw condensed above his head and swept out. The giant blood bowl was instantly smashed into pieces, and a bloodstone flew out from its flesh. The grade of this bloodstone was clearly much higher than the ones Chu Fengmian had absorbed along the way. The bodies of blood demonic beasts were made of condensed bloodstones, which were their demonic cores. Because the blood demonic beasts had condensed these bloodstones, the quality of these bloodstones was pretty good. In order to obtain high-quality bloodstones, one had to hunt blood demonic beasts. The giant blood bowl was considered an extremely high-grade beast in the world of blood. Chu Fengmian didn't expect to encounter one as soon as he entered. There was only one explanation for this: there was a treasured land nearby. The power of a fresh blood demonic beast was based on its blood qi. Only in places with dense blood qi would there be powerful fresh blood demonic beasts. Normally, fresh blood demonic beasts would only appear in the fresh blood world core. Only a treasured land nearby could explain the giant blood bull's appearance. Young Master Chu is very brave. We're not too far away from the treasured land. Great Ancestor Wang Dao said calmly from the side. There was even a hint of a smile in his eyes. Sure enough, he's just a brat. There are many beasts in the world of blood. If he were to encounter a group of beasts, they would cover the sky and cover the earth. Can this person deal with them? If he doesn't conserve his spiritual energy now, he'll die when he encounters a group of beasts. Great Ancestor Wang Dao sneered in his heart. In the world of blood, every bit of spiritual energy had to be conserved. After all, this place was filled with blood qi. It wasn't easy to refine the blood qi, and there was no way to replenish one's spiritual energy at will. Chu Fengmian's swaggering fighting style made him look like a newbie to them. With young Master Chu's help, this treasured land will be ours for sure. We, the 5 ancestors of Divine Saber, only ask that young Master Chu give us 10% of the bloodstones. We'll be satisfied. Great Ancestor Forging Saber said flatteringly from the side. Well said, well said. As long as you're obedient, the bloodstones won't shortchange you. Chu Fengmian said with a smile, looking very happy. However, he was sneering in his heart. Of course, Chu Fengmian knew the rules of the world of blood. However, he didn't need to conserve his spiritual energy. His divine veins could replenish his spiritual energy anywhere. In the world of blood, Chu Fengmian could also continuously extract spiritual energy to replenish his spiritual energy. Chapter 11:16. Along the way, Chu Fengmian single-handedly killed all the Blood Clan monsters he encountered. As for the 5 ancestors of Divine Saber, they were all flattering him. Although their faces were respectful, they were sneering in their hearts. Chu Fengmian went to kill monsters alone, saving all their spiritual power. In this world of blood, self-preservation had always been the most important thing. Only by surviving could one obtain the bloodstone. If Chu Fengmian squandered his spiritual power like this, he would definitely die when he ran out of spiritual power. In the world of blood, there was no safe place to restore spiritual power. If one ran out of spiritual power, not to mention dealing with monsters, even if they encountered other warriors, those warriors would not hesitate to attack and kill them directly. Battles between martial artists were the same no matter where they were. It would be much easier for a martial artist who was running out of spiritual power to kill some blood tribe monstrous beasts. Of course, the Divine Saber ancestors were aware of this, but none of them spoke out to remind Chu Fengmian. For them, it did not matter whether Chu Fengmian lived or died. They just wanted to use him. When Chu Fengmian was no longer useful, they would directly attack and kill him. Boom! The claws of the war dragon swept across, and a huge blood tiger of more than 10 meters in front of Chu Fengmian was directly torn apart and killed on the spot. Chu Fengmian moved in the air and took a bloodstone the size of a washbasin from the blood tiger's body. He then put it into the empty ring. This was the first time he had encountered a Blood Clan monster. Along the way, Chu Fengmian had easily killed all of them. After killing the blood tiger, Chu Fengmian's aura fluctuated, as if it could no longer be stabilized. This was a sign that his spiritual power was depleted. Chu Fengmian had the holy pulse, so this kind of consumption of spiritual power could be easily recovered. However, in order to confuse the 5 ancestors of Divine Saber, Chu Fengmian deliberately showed some strain. Obviously, this kind of fighting style could not be maintained for long for Chu Fengmian. All of this was seen by the 5 ancestors of Divine Saber. The 5 ancestors of Divine Saber looked at each other, and there was a hint of mockery in their eyes. When Chu Fengmian was exhausted and no longer useful, it would be time for them to attack. However, now was not the time for that. Young Master Chu, we're not far from the treasure land. Let's hurry over. Progenitor Wang Dao came over and said all of a sudden. Wait, let me take a break. Chu Fengmian revealed a tired expression. Just as he was about to sit down, Ancestor Bayonet and Ancestor Saber walked over. Young Master Chu, please rest for a while. The edge of the treasure land is the most dangerous. This is Forefather Forging Knife, Forefather Bayonet said. Let's enter the treasure land first. All right then. Chu Fengmian frowned but didn't say anything. He slowly got up and urged his spiritual power again. The team of 6 turned into a beam of light and flew directly in the direction of the treasure land. In less than 5 minutes, the surrounding blood mist grew thicker and thicker. This was a sign that they were close to a treasure trove. Behind this blood mist, there seemed to be a huge figure. Let's go, there's a treasure ahead. Great Ancestor Wang Dao said anxiously when he saw this. Their escape lights sped up, and without any hesitation, they shuttled through the blood mist and flew towards the treasure land. After passing through layers of blood mist, Chu Fengmian suddenly felt a powerful force pulling him. However, this force wasn't human, but the power of heaven and earth. Sensing that this force wasn't dangerous, Chu Fengmian didn't resist and allowed it to pull him to a certain place. Bam! Chu Fengmian's figure fell like a meteor into a desert. The desert was boundless, but the sand beneath Chu Fengmian's feet wasn't golden. Instead, it was blood-red. This was a blood-red desert. Is this desert a treasure trove? Chu Fengmian observed his surroundings and felt that there seemed to be an extremely terrifying power hidden under the desert. There were also continents and mountains in the world of blood. Most of the treasure lands were hidden in such places. It seemed that the treasure land was the desert in front of Chu Fengmian. As for the bloodstones, whoosh! Suddenly, Chu Fengmian's heart stirred. He activated his spiritual consciousness and searched the desert's underground. There were traces of bloodstones every few meters under the desert. It was unknown how many bloodstones were buried under the desert. At a glance, Chu Fengmian estimated that there were at least 10,000 of them. Moreover, the desert was boundless. Chu Fengmian could see a lot more from afar. These bloodstones are all under the desert. It's not difficult to obtain them. But why is my power being devoured every minute and every second here? Chu Fengmian keenly felt that his spiritual power was being devoured by a force every minute and every second. This force seemed to have shrouded the entire blood-red desert. Any living creature that entered the desert would have their power devoured. What surprised Chu Fengmian the most was that even with his spiritual consciousness, he couldn't find out where this force came from. It was mysterious. The world of blood is indeed as strange as the legends say. There must be something hidden inside. The people of the ancient Serpent Empire controlled the entrance to the world of blood, but they didn't guard it strictly. Instead, they allowed any martial artist to enter. There must be something hidden inside. One should know that if a treasure land like the world of blood was obtained by any force, they would guard it strictly. They wouldn't allow martial artists to enter as they pleased. However, the world of blood wasn't guarded. Anyone could enter it. Chu Fengmian didn't believe that the ancient Serpent Empire would be so kind. It could only be that they were plotting something. Forget it. I'll get the bloodstones first and break through to the next realm. It's time for me to break through to the next realm. Chu Fengmian's realm was close to breaking through to the next realm. He could break through to the next realm at any time. However, Chu Fengmian had been suppressing his realm and didn't choose to break through. Chapter 11:17. Chu Fengmian observed the Scarlet Desert for a moment. Just as he was about to gather his spiritual energy to absorb the bloodstones beneath the Scarlet Desert, suddenly, several figures descended from the sky. These figures were none other than the 5 ancestors of Divine Saber. The moment the 5th ancestor of Divine Saber appeared, a terrifying spiritual energy suddenly erupted from Chu Fengmian's side. This spiritual energy seemed to have merged with the surrounding blood qi as it circled around Chu Fengmian's periphery. The 5 ancestors of Divine Saber stood to the side and stared coldly at Chu Fengmian. One could even see the spiritual sabers in their hands. The murderous intent in their eyes was undisguised. What are you trying to do? Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold. There was no need for him to think at this point. He could see clearly what they were up to. He didn't expect the 5 ancestors of Divine Saber to make their move as soon as he arrived at the treasure land. "Kid, you're no longer of any use to us. We were planning to let you live a little longer, but you've already exhausted your spiritual energy. There's no point in keeping a piece of trash like you alive." Ancestor Forging Saber stood to the side. The charming smile on his face had disappeared and was replaced by a mocking smile. "Kid, you have only yourself to blame for wasting so much spiritual energy outside. We didn't want to deal with you at first, but now it seems that you're useless." Ancestor Bayonet said coldly. "Chu Fengmian, for the sake of our friendship along the way, I'll give you a chance today. Open up your mind and become our slave. Be the bait and lure the Blood Serpent Chieftain." Ancestor Wang Dao's eyes flickered as he looked at Chu Fengmian. "As long as you survive, we'll let you live. How about it? So you're saying that you want me to throw my life away?" Chu Fengmian didn't show any signs of panic. Instead, he revealed a playful smile. "What if I say no? Then you'll die here. We've set up this formation to deal with the Blood Serpent Chieftain anyway. It just so happens that we're lacking a warrior's blood essence. Just obediently die in this formation and become its power." Patriarch Wang Dao laughed loudly. "Since you're going to die anyway, make your choice, kid. Of course, don't even think about resisting. Even if you use all your strength, you won't be able to resist the power of this array, not to mention that you don't have much spiritual energy left." The Flying Blade Ancestor said with a hearty laugh. "The way I see it, it's better to just kill this brat. I've heard that he has quite a bit of wealth on him. Killing him and obtaining his wealth would also be a great harvest." The Solitary Saber Ancestor licked his lips, his eyes filled with greed. "Really? I don't know where you 5 pieces of trash get the confidence to actually dare to deal with me?" Suddenly, Chu Fengmian sneered. He glanced at the Divine Blade Group 5 and laughed loudly. It is said that Ancestor Wu's essence blood is the best way to attract the Blood Snake clan. Today, I will kill all of you and use your blood as bait. Do you think this little formation is a match for me? If I wanted to kill you, it would be like slaughtering chickens and dogs. I didn't want to kill you at first, but it's a pity that you're courting death today. Don't blame me then." Murderous intent surged in Chu Fengmian's eyes. He originally wanted the Divine Blade Group 5 to deal with the Blood Snake leader with him, but since they were courting death, Chu Fengmian would fulfill their wish. Gigantic Sword Ray. Behind Chu Fengmian, a sword light suddenly shot up into the sky. Thanks to this sword light, Chu Fengmian's power rose steadily until it reached the peak of the ultimate celestial grade in an instant. This strength was something that Chu Fengmian did not show when he was outside just now. This brat still has a trump card, but it's fine. Let's attack together and kill this brat. Patriarch Wang Dao ordered without hesitation when he saw Chu Fengmian's aura rising. He took the lead and slashed at Chu Fengmian with the tip of his hand. The speed of this slash was much faster than when he was outside. Clearly, Patriarch Wang Dao had also concealed his strength when he was fighting with Chu Fengmian. Kill! This brat just used up so much of his spiritual energy. He must be exhausted by now. He's just a paper tiger. Let's attack. The remaining patriarchs Forging Knife, Bayonet Forging Knife, and the others also attacked at the same time. 5 different styles of blade light slashed at Chu Fengmian. The power of these 5 blades was different. Although the 5 Divine Blade Patriarchs had been working together, they cultivated different types of blades. It was difficult to guard against them when they attacked together. Brat, it's your honor to die under the blades of our 5 Divine Blade Patriarchs. Patriarch Wang Dao smiled maliciously and channeled his spiritual energy. A huge amount of spiritual energy slashed at Chu Fengmian. I've said it before. You 5 Divine Blade Patriarchs are just ants in my eyes. How dare you use such broken blades in front of me? Battle Dragon's Claw, sweeping heaven and earth. In an instant, a thought passed through Chu Fengmian's mind as the Battle Dragon Claw suddenly materialized. It descended from the sky and directly swept towards the 5 blades. Boom! The Scarlet Desert trembled under the Battle Dragon's Claw. The 5 blades were swept away in an instant, leaving no room for resistance. Chu Fengmian single-handedly shattered the joint attack of the 5 divine blade patriarchs. Such power! Is he really in the heavenly mandate realm? Can he withstand the joint attack of the 5 of us? The forging saber ancestor was shocked to see this. If the 5 divine saber ancestors joined forces, any immortal realm old ancestor would be killed instantly. Who would have thought that Chu Fengmian would be able to withstand their attacks? Don't worry, we've been prepared. Activate the formation, 1,000 slashes. Slash heaven and earth. Patriarch Wang Dao suddenly shouted. The remaining 4 reacted at the same time and unleashed their spiritual energy at the same time. All of their spiritual energy was injected into the formation beneath Chu Fengmian's feet. Suddenly, countless blades gathered around Chu Fengmian. There were at least 10 million blades, each with the power of 1,000 changes. The power of these blades was enough to tear the space apart. No one could stop them. Chapter 11:18. The blade alone was enough to tear everything apart. Now, the blade seemed to have fused with the surrounding blood qi. The power of the formation was enough to mobilize the blood qi of the bloody world, increasing the power of the blade by several folds. Kid, even if you have thousands of trump cards, you'll still die today. This formation was prepared for quasi-emperors, it's overkill to use it on you. However, the opportunities you have are indeed terrifying. The benefits of killing you may not be any less than killing a quasi-emperor. It's worth it. Patriarch Wang Dao said with a pained expression. The formation was originally prepared to deal with the blood serpent leader. They didn't expect to use it to deal with Chu Fengmian, but Chu Fengmian's strength had exceeded their expectations. The fact that a mere heavenly mandate realm cultivator could unleash such terrifying power meant that Chu Fengmian's bloodline had been through countless encounters. The benefits of killing Chu Fengmian would be even greater. Godly blade of annihilation. Slash. Tens of thousands of blades merged into one and turned into a huge long saber. Behind the long saber was Ancestor Wang Dao. His face was ferocious as he controlled the saber to slash at Chu Fengmian. Break! Chu Fengmian's expression didn't change at all when he saw the gigantic blade coming at him. With a thought, the appearance of the battle dragon claw began to change. 1,000 formations began to operate, transforming the battle dragon claw into Patriarch Jianwang's appearance. Sky-tearing claw. Rumble. As this claw soared into the sky, the massive blade was torn apart without hesitation when it came into contact with the sky-ripping claw. The aftershock of the claw created a gigantic crater in the bloody desert. The sand and stones on the surface were all crushed and disappeared, revealing the countless bloodstones underground. The moment the claw was unleashed, the heavens collapsed and the earth cracked. The power of this claw was already close to the power of the legendary ancestral sky dragon's claw. It was extremely terrifying. How can you withstand the power of this formation? This is a power that not even a quasi-emperor can break. How could you possibly do it? Old Ancestor Wang Dao shouted in disbelief when he saw Chu Fengmian break the formation with a single claw. Are you really at the heavenly mandate realm? Even the geniuses of the 8 great imperial clans can't do this. Why can't I do what a quasi-emperor can't? The geniuses of the 8 royal families aren't even fit to carry my shoes. I've said it before, your strength is like an ant in front of me. All of you, die! Chu Fengmian sneered. Even a quasi-emperor couldn't break it? Chu Fengmian was someone who had truly defeated a quasi-emperor and even killed one. As for the geniuses of the 8 great sovereign families, Chu Fengmian's aptitude wasn't inferior to those legendary geniuses. He was the first person to have such power at the heavens mandate realm. Of course, it couldn't be deduced using common sense. Not good, run! Old Ancestor Flying Blade hurriedly shouted. He could see the murderous intent in Chu Fengmian's eyes, but just as he was about to run away, the surrounding space suddenly froze. No matter how they bombarded the frozen space with their powers, they were unable to shake it in the slightest. Tianlong change. Jianwang change's spatial lockdown was something that not even the great sovereign, who was a quasi-emperor, could break. After Chu Fengmian used Tianwang change, only Ouyang Li could break it. The strength of the divine saber 5 ancestors wasn't even comparable to the great sovereign. The lockdown of Tianwang change was simply unshakable for them. Still trying to escape? Today, all of you will die. Chu Fengmian shouted coldly as his battle dragon claw swept across. The body of the divine saber 5 ancestors was instantly destroyed by the battle dragon claw. Their eyes were filled with resentment, but even if they were resentful, they couldn't resist Chu Fengmian. Like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, they only left clouds of blood and empty rings in the air. Collect. Chu Fengmian pointed his finger and all the empty rings fell into his palm. Less than 10,000 bloodstones? There were less than 10,000 bloodstones in the empty rings of the divine saber 5 ancestors, which made Chu Fengmian a little unhappy. However, when he thought about the sky-high price of a bloodstone outside, Chu Fengmian understood. If bloodstones weren't so rare, they wouldn't have been so expensive. 10,000 bloodstones were quite a lot for Chu Fengmian. As for the other things, Chu Fengmian transferred them to his empty ring. In addition to the empty ring, there was also a ball of red blood in front of Chu Fengmian. This red blood was condensed from the blood essence of the divine saber 5 ancestors. It was said that the demonic beasts of the fresh blood world loved the blood essence of martialists and demonic celestials. Since the blood snakes of the blood desert didn't come out, Chu Fengmian would use this blood essence to lure them out. Disperse. Chu Fengmian pointed his finger and the ball of blood essence suddenly floated in the air, spreading towards the blood desert. Through his spiritual awareness, Chu Fengmian discovered that the blood snakes hidden under the blood desert were starting to lose their patience. Hiss. Suddenly, a snake shadow appeared below Chu Fengmian. This snake shadow was more than 10 meters long. It was a life and death realm blood snake. Boom! Chu Fengmian didn't even look at it. He casually struck out with his palm, and the blood snake died in Chu Fengmian's palm. At the same time, a bloodstone also fell into Chu Fengmian's hand. Hiss. Hiss. Following the death of this blood snake, more and more of these noises were heard around Chu Fengmian. More and more blood snakes were scuttling out of the desert. Life and death realm blood snakes, life and death steps, and heaven's mandate realm blood snakes appeared one after another. These blood snakes represented bloodstones. Of course, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be polite. He condensed the battle dragon claw and swept it over. In an instant, the hundreds of blood snakes were all shattered by the battle dragon claw. At the same time, more and more blood snakes flew out. The blood serpent clan was a large clan that moved in groups. Since these blood serpents chose to attack Chu Fengmian, they would come out in an endless stream. Because of this, the blood serpent clan had always been a huge problem in the world of fresh blood. Chapter 11:19. Many ants could kill an elephant. Killing one blood snake didn't require much spiritual energy. However, even a quasi-emperor's spiritual energy would be completely depleted if they encountered tens of thousands of blood snakes. Even a quasi-emperor would choose to avoid a battle when encountering such a huge group of blood snakes. However, Chu Fengmian was an exception. As he watched more and more blood snakes rush over, Chu Fengmian didn't show any signs of nervousness. Instead, he revealed a delighted smile. Each of these blood snakes represented a bloodstone. Some of the more powerful blood snakes even had bloodstones that were purer than the bloodstones they had absorbed outside. In Chu Fengmian's opinion, these blood snakes were pure bloodstones. As for the spiritual energy they consumed, although the effects of the divine meridians were somewhat affected in the world of fresh blood, it wasn't a problem for them to recover their spiritual energy. However, they couldn't condense as many spirit stones as they could in the outside world. Boom! Chu Fengmian didn't have any scruples when he used his martial techniques. He didn't need to conserve his spiritual energy either. Every move he made killed a large number of blood snakes. At the same time, Chu Fengmian waved his other hand and absorbed the bloodstones from the blood snakes. Including the underground bloodstones, Chu Fengmian had obtained at least 10,000 bloodstones. Finally can't sit still anymore? While Chu Fengmian was wantonly slaughtering the blood snakes, a surge of blood qi suddenly erupted. This powerful figure from the blood snake clan seemed to have lost his patience and suddenly made a move. With a series of roars, these blood snakes, which were originally scattered, suddenly gathered together. In an instant, the blood qi surged. Array formation. These blood snakes actually know how to use array formations. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. He could naturally tell that these blood snakes were actually setting up an array formation. Ordinary blood demonic beasts didn't have any intelligence and could only rely on their instincts to fight. Regardless of whether it was in Lei Yan's memory or the ancient Snake Chamber of Commerce's information, he had never heard of the Blood Snake clan being able to use array formations. A group of demonic beasts that only knew how to fight instinctively and a group of demonic beasts that knew how to work together in formations were on a completely different level. Chu Fengmian did not take the power of these blood snakes seriously, but when they joined forces, the power of 10,000 blood snakes erupted together. Not to mention a quasi-emperor, even a true venerable emperor would have to think twice before facing it head-on. Forget it. Let's kill those blood snake kings first. Chu Fengmian looked over and saw a total of 7 huge blood snakes in the distance. It was the appearance of these 7 huge blood snakes that calmed down the messy fighting style of the other blood snakes and started to form a formation. These blood snake kings were peak immortal realm blood snakes. They were the kings of the blood snake clan. The rest of the blood snakes were under their command. They would then set up a formation to capture the leader. After killing the blood snake kings, the rest of the blood snakes without intelligence would be leaderless and useless. Break! Suddenly, Chu Fengmian waved his hand and a burst of spiritual energy erupted. It transformed into the shape of a dragon claw in the air and attacked the 7 blood snake kings behind him. The dragon claw swept across and killed all the blood snakes in front of Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's body followed the dragon claw and attacked the heart of the blood snake clan. However, at this moment, the blood snake formation that seemed to have been broken suddenly erupted with a terrifying power. A huge amount of blood qi shot up from the gap and attacked Chu Fengmian. They know how to scheme. Chu Fengmian did not expect that not only did they know how to set up formations, but the intelligence of the blood snake clan had also reached an extremely high level. Chu Fengmian's attack on the blood snake formation seemed to be a deliberate move by these blood snake kings. Without giving Chu Fengmian any time to think, these blood snakes erupted with a terrifying power and attacked Chu Fengmian. The power of the 10,000 blood snake exploded out instantly. Blood qi filled the air, covering the entire area. This blood qi transformed into a gigantic snake tail that came crashing down. In an instant, a layer of golden dragon scales appeared on the edge of Chu Fengmian's body. Then, the divine tree around Chu Fengmian's body also condensed its power to the extreme. Invincible Battle Dragon. Behind Chu Fengmian, an illusory image of an ancient battle dragon suddenly soared into the sky and collided with the serpent tails. Boom! The shadow of the dragon and snake collided in the air and then disappeared at the same time. The power of these blood snakes is really terrifying. The great formation formed by the 10,000 blood snakes is indeed enough to contend against the quasi-emperor. Chu Fengmian's gaze swept across and suddenly shifted away from the 7 blood snake kings. These blood snake kings seemed to have been ordered to attack Chu Fengmian together. This also proved that there were other experts behind these blood snake kings. Still not planning to come out? Looks like you'll only come out after I kill these 7 blood snake kings. Chu Fengmian didn't need to guess who was behind this. He knew very well that the only person who could command these 7 blood snake kings was the leader of the blood snake clan, the ruler of the blood snake clan. Sword out. Chu Fengmian didn't waste any more time. In the world of blood, no one knew Chu Fengmian's identity, so he didn't need to worry about anything. When he was outside, Chu Fengmian deliberately disguised himself as a member of the dragon clan, so he couldn't use his sword skills. However, in the world of blood, Chu Fengmian didn't have such concerns. The ancestral dragon supreme sword was suddenly unsheathed and a terrifying dragon's might was released. At the same time, the sword moved. Dazzling sword light shot up into the sky and slashed in all directions. In an instant, a total of 9,900 sword lights were slashed out at the same time. Many blood snakes were instantly shattered into pieces. In an instant, thousands of blood snakes were slain. This was a massacre. Damn it! All of a sudden, something strange happened in the heart of the Blood Serpent clan. A terrifying blood chi burst forth and shattered the sword chi. At the same time, a gigantic blood snake suddenly appeared. This blood snake was at least 1,000 miles long. It was a colossal creature in the blood desert. Chapter 11:20. Emperor's Aura. Chu Fengmian could clearly feel the presence of the Emperor's aura from the giant blood snake. The leader of the Blood Snake clan, the Blood Snake Emperor, was a quasi-emperor. "Little guy, why did you come to kill the people of my Blood Snake clan?" The Blood Snake Emperor looked at Chu Fengmian with his huge eyes and suddenly spoke in human language. According to the rumors, the intelligence of blood demons was extremely low. There were very few who had intelligence, but the Blood Snake Emperor was an exception. He actually understood human language and had intelligence. The formation of the Blood Snake clan should have been created by the Blood Snake Emperor. Trespassing into the territory of my Blood Snake clan is a capital offense. The Blood Snake Emperor spoke again. "Seeing that you still have some strength, you can cripple your own cultivation now. This Emperor only wants your blood essence and I will spare your life." The Blood Snake Emperor looked at Chu Fengmian. As a quasi-emperor, he could naturally see that no matter how strong Chu Fengmian was, he was only at the heavenly mandate realm. Compared to a quasi-emperor, Chu Fengmian was even less than an ant. Of course, if he wanted Chu Fengmian to die, Chu Fengmian must die. Ha ha ha. Chu Fengmian didn't answer. Instead, he suddenly laughed when he heard the Blood Snake Emperor's words. "Little guy, what are you laughing at?" The Blood Snake Emperor's eyes changed and his murderous intent shrouded over. "Let me tell you, little guy. Your only chance now is to kneel down and risk your blood essence. Otherwise, you'll be devoured by me. I feel an ancient aura from your body." "What is it? Ancient battle dragon?" "No, it's even more ancient than the ancient battle dragon. But no matter what it is, my strength will improve after I devour it. Make your choice. Do you want to give me your blood essence or wait for me to devour you? What are you laughing at?" "Of course, I'm laughing at your arrogance. Even if you become a quasi-emperor, you're just a beast. How dare you call yourself a sovereign?" Chu Fengmian took a step forward and his eyes were cold. "Give you my blood essence? You're not worthy. The bloodstone in your body must have no essence. Once I obtain your bloodstone, it will be enough for my bloodline to advance to the next level. You're courting death." Before Chu Fengmian's voice faded, the Blood Snake Emperor's anger had already reached its peak. He was the overlord of the blood world, and even a quasi-emperor would not dare to go against him. Moreover, Chu Fengmian was just a little guy. Moreover, Chu Fengmian had said that he would take his bloodstone. This was the same as wanting his life. "I'll let you have a taste of a quasi-emperor's might. Die, brat." The ancient serpent emperor bellowed as his massive body charged towards Chu Fengmian. His massive body was as fast as lightning as he charged towards Chu Fengmian in an instant. "You want to compete with me in strength?" A hint of a smile flashed across Chu Fengmian's eyes. "Let's see who's stronger today." Soaring Snake Transformation. The soaring serpent phantom instantly condensed behind Chu Fengmian's back. Chu Fengmian felt that his body's strength had swelled by dozens of times. He immediately threw a punch in the face of this incomparably huge body. Crack! The moment this punch was thrown, the space trembled. Even a great supremacy would not be able to withstand the punch of the soaring snake transformation. The Blood Snake Emperor in front of him was so huge that his strength would not be weak. This was a good opportunity for Chu Fengmian to see how strong he was. Are you trying to fight me with your physical body? Are you courting death? A hint of disdain flashed across the Blood Snake Emperor's eyes when he saw Chu Fengmian's attack. One of the most terrifying aspects of the Blood Demon race was their strength. They were born in the Blood World. It could be said that the Blood Chi of the Blood World was the source of their strength. As a result, their strength was incomparably strong. Even a quasi-emperor would not be able to contend with them head-on. As for Chu Fengmian, a little guy that he did not put in his eyes, he actually wanted to fight him. He was indeed courting death. Let's see. Chu Fengmian did not argue. His seemingly ordinary punch collided with the Blood Snake Emperor's body in the air. At the moment of collision, the disdainful look on the Blood Snake Emperor's face suddenly changed, revealing a look of horror. His strength was actually vaguely suppressed by Chu Fengmian. This was something that he had never dreamed of. This was the first time the Blood Snake Emperor had encountered such a thing after becoming a quasi-emperor. His strength was actually suppressed. All along, he had thought that only a true sovereign could do this. However, Chu Fengmian, who was just a little guy in his eyes, was actually able to do it. You still want to talk nonsense? Divine War Dragon Fist. Without waiting for the Blood Snake Emperor to speak, Chu Fengmian threw another punch at him in an instant. At the same time, Chu Fengmian exclaimed inwardly. The power of the soaring snake bloodline was indeed extremely terrifying. Even the ancient Snake Emperor was no match for Chu Fengmian's strength in the soaring snake transformation state. Of course, what Chu Fengmian had inherited was only the power of the soaring snake bloodline. As for the rest, Chu Fengmian was still far from being able to use them. However, this power alone was enough. Even Ouyang Li, who had terrifying strength, would be seriously injured if he were to accidentally take a full blow from Chu Fengmian in the soaring snake transformation state. Bang! Another punch bombarded the Blood Snake Emperor's body. The scales on the Blood Snake Emperor's body were constantly shattered by this punch. Even his body was blasted dozens of miles away. Damn it! Damn it! Little guy, I'm going to kill you and eat you alive. This power is the soaring snake bloodline. You actually have the bloodline of the soaring snake bloodline. Once I kill you, my bloodline will transform and I'll be able to leave this damned place. The Blood Snake Emperor let out a loud roar. He had already understood what the power contained in Chu Fengmian's body was. His eyes became scorching hot. If he could obtain the bloodline of an innate divine beast, his strength and bloodline would undergo earth-shattering changes. At that time, he might even be able to leave the world of fresh blood. One had to know that all the demonic beasts in the world of fresh blood were unable to leave the world of fresh blood. Now, the Blood Snake Emperor saw the hope of leaving the world of fresh blood through Chu Fengmian's body. How could he not be excited? Chapter 11:21. The Blood Snake Emperor roared and immediately charged towards Chu Fengmian. His scales turned even redder and the surrounding blood chi flew towards the Blood Snake Emperor and was devoured by him. At the same time, the Blood Snake Emperor's injuries were instantly healed. Kid, we are all immortal in the world of fresh blood. So what if you're strong? I'd like to see how long your secret technique can last. The Blood Snake Emperor's intelligence was no less than that of a demon god. He could see that Chu Fengmian wasn't using the soaring serpent's power, but was forcibly activated by some means. Forcibly activating the power of a quasi-emperor at the heavenly mandate realm was an extremely difficult thing to do. Every moment would put a great burden on the body and it couldn't be maintained for long. In the world of blood, the Blood Snake Emperor could continuously absorb blood chi to heal his injuries. As for the consumption of blood chi, it was abundant in the world of blood. In here, he could be considered as having an immortal body. The Blood Snake Emperor was now entangled with Chu Fengmian, not intending to give Chu Fengmian a chance to escape. As long as he could delay Chu Fengmian until the power of the soaring serpent transformation disappeared, he would undoubtedly win. Immortal? Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a cold smile when he heard the Blood Snake Emperor's words. So what if you have an immortal body? Your body can recover 1,000 times. I'll kill you 10,000 times and see if you can still recover. Titanic Watchtower, unsheath. A huge sword suddenly condensed in Chu Fengmian's left hand and was suddenly unsheathed. The moment the Titanic Watchtower divine sword was unsheathed, the aura on Chu Fengmian's body was completely different from before. The sword intent on his body seemed to have condensed to a peak. The sword intent of the divine sword realm. The moment the two swords were unsheathed, Chu Fengmian's sword intent reached its peak and condensed the sword intent of the divine sword realm. This was Chu Fengmian's full strength. The power of the soaring serpent transformation and the divine sword realm erupted at the same time. Chu Fengmian's two great origin powers were activated at the same time. This aura was even stronger than that of a quasi-emperor. A dual sword cultivator? How is such a powerful sword intent possible? The Blood Snake Emperor shouted in disbelief as he stared at Chu Fengmian. Even though he had seen countless cultivators who had entered the world of fresh blood, he had only seen such a dual swordsman and such terrifying sword will from Chu Fengmian. The sword will on Chu Fengmian's body was enough to destroy everything. It was as if everything would be destroyed in the face of this sword will. The Blood Serpent Monarch could clearly sense the horror of this force. This level was comparable to that of a great perfection quasi-emperor or even a peak quasi-emperor. And this kind of power actually belonged to a young heavenly fate realm cultivator? While the Blood Snake ruler was shocked, he also made a move. It would be extremely dangerous to sit and wait for death. Even though Chu Fengmian was very strong, his current actions were like walking on a tightrope. As long as he could strike Chu Fengmian once, the power in Chu Fengmian's body would dissipate. Blood Serpent Clan, sacrifice Lakna, blood kill. The Blood Serpent Monarch roared and the blood serpents suddenly shattered, leaving only a bloody mist in the sky. In an instant, he ordered all the blood serpents to sacrifice together. The power of more than 10,000 blood serpents was sacrificed and turned into clouds of bloody mist. The number of blood serpents sacrificed was enough to destroy more than half of the Blood Serpent clan. But now, he couldn't care less. Moreover, Chu Fengmian had a bloodline that could transcend the world of fresh blood. As long as he could kill Chu Fengmian, all the losses could be made up for. Heavenly Blood Star. Kill! Under the control of the Blood Serpent Monarch, the bloody mist suddenly condensed into the shape of a giant axe in the air. This giant axe was condensed from the essence and blood of 10,000 blood serpents. The bloody mist on it was self-evident. The moment the giant blood axe condensed, the entire bloody desert trembled. Even the space was trembling. An extremely terrifying power burned and blasted towards Chu Fengmian. He actually sacrificed his clan. Chu Fengmian didn't expect the Blood Serpent Monarch to be so ruthless. In order to deal with Chu Fengmian, he actually chose to sacrifice his clan. But for these demon emperors, their clan was their power. The power obtained by sacrificing their clan was also their trump card. The power of 10,000 blood serpents gathered together was already extremely terrifying, not to mention that they were sacrificing together. This attack was the strongest attack of the Blood Serpent Monarch, but Chu Fengmian wasn't afraid. He still had half of the time left in his soaring serpent transformation. Coupled with the great sword light and sword will, Chu Fengmian was now in his strongest state. Come on then. Double sword break the sky. All of you, break. Chu Fengmian took a step forward and rushed towards the giant blood axe. The power of the two spiritual swords erupted at the same time, turning into a sword light that soared into the sky. Two sword lights soared into the sky at the same time, meeting the giant blood axe. Little guy, do you really think I want to fight you head-on? Just as the two forces were about to collide, a sudden change occurred. As the blood-red axe was about to collide with Qin Nan, it suddenly transformed into an enormous vortex. The vortex was so deep that one couldn't see the bottom of it. The two sword qis that were tens of thousands of feet long were mercilessly devoured by the vortex. What kind of power is this? Devouring? The power of these two sword qi was actually devoured? Chu Fengmian's face was filled with horror as he retreated abruptly. His sword Dao had already reached the sword body realm and was close to the sword Dao quintessence. It would be extremely difficult for him to resist the sword Qi at this level, let alone devouring it. Sky Devouring Secret Skill. This is the Sky Devouring Secret Skill. Just as Chu Fengmian was shocked, Xing Xian's voice suddenly appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind. His tone was even more shocked than Chu Fengmian's. Sky Devouring Secret Skill? What kind of martial technique is that? Chu Fengmian had never heard of the Sky Devouring Secret Skill, so he hurriedly asked. The Sky Devouring Secret Skill is not a martial technique, but a secret skill that only the Sky Devouring Beast knows. How could this little blood serpent know the Sky Devouring Secret Skill? This kind of secret skill can only be used by those who possess the bloodline of the Sky Devouring Beast. Could it be that the blood serpent's body contains the bloodline of the Sky Devouring Beast? Xing Xian explained. Chapter 11:22. A Sky Devouring Beast? Chu Fengmian did not know much about the Sky Devouring secret technique, but he knew about the Sky Devouring Beast. The Sky Devouring Beast was a famous innate divine beast that was on par with the Soaring Serpent and primogenitor Jianwang. Its ability was to devour the heavens and devour everything. It was said that the Sky Devouring Beast wanted to devour the heavens, which led to its destruction. As for its bloodline, Chu Feng had never heard of it. The Blood Serpent Emperor actually knew the Sky Devouring secret technique and possessed the bloodline of the Sky Devouring Beast. Before Chu Fengmian could think, the Blood Serpent Emperor burst into laughter. "Kid, what's wrong? Is there no way to deal with the Sky Devouring secret technique? Just wait to be devoured by the Sky Devouring secret technique." In an instant, the Blood Serpent Emperor struck again. A huge vortex suddenly appeared in front of Chu Fengmian. The vortex was so big that it seemed like it was going to devour Chu Fengmian. "Oh no, retreat! Even if you have the power of the Soaring Serpent transformation, you can't resist the Sky Devouring secret technique. The Sky Devouring Beast and the Soaring Serpent are innate divine beasts of the same level. However, your cultivation level is far below the Blood Serpent Emperor's. If this goes on, you will be devoured by him." Xing Xian shouted anxiously in Chu Feng's mind. Once Chu Fengmian was sucked into the vortex, he would be completely devoured. There would be no chance for him to escape. "I know. Phantom Body Technique, run." Chu Fengmian used all his strength to resist the vortex. At the same time, he pushed his body technique to the maximum. However, regardless of how far Chu Fengmian was able to fly in an instant, the frightening attractive force would always pull Chu Fengmian back to his original location. It was as if the vortex was following behind Chu Fengmian at all times. Chu Fengmian could not get rid of it despite using countless methods. Don't even think about escaping. Once you fall into the hands of the Sky Devouring secret technique, you won't be able to escape. The Blood Serpent Emperor looked at Chu Fengmian and laughed sinisterly. "I was born with the Sky Devouring bloodline. If I add the Soaring Serpent bloodline to the two innate divine beasts' bloodlines, my future will be limitless. I might even surpass the innate realm. Brat, in order to thank you, I won't torture you this time. I'll directly devour you." The Blood Serpent Emperor roared loudly. At the same time, he pushed his power to the limit. The vortex behind Chu Fengmian started to grow bigger and bigger. This terrifying power made Chu Fengmian somewhat unable to withstand it. "This won't do. If this goes on, I'll be devoured sooner or later. However, the power of this heaven-devouring secret skill prevents me from escaping at all. Even the power of Tianwang transformation cannot withstand it. Danger." The more dangerous the situation Chu Fengmian was in, the calmer his mind was. The power of the Emperor Jar doesn't work either. What should I do? Could it be that he had to use the Bloodslayer Demon Sword? The last time I used it, I almost died. This is the world of blood, it's extremely dangerous. If I use it, there's a 90% chance that I'll be killed. In the face of the heaven-devouring secret skill, Chu Fengmian was afraid that he wouldn't be able to break it even if he used the power of the Emperor Jar. Only the power of the Bloodslayer Demon Sword could do that. However, once he used the Bloodslayer Demon Sword, Chu Fengmian would fall into endless danger like the last time. Furthermore, this place was different from other places. This was the world of blood. If Chu Fengmian lost his power, anyone would kill him. Therefore, Chu Fengmian wouldn't use the Bloodslayer Demon Sword unless it was absolutely necessary. It had to be used at the last moment. Brat, you still want to struggle? All your trump cards are meaningless in the face of the heaven-devouring secret skill. Stop struggling and be devoured by me. The Blood Serpent Emperor laughed sinisterly. As he laughed, the sky and earth suddenly shook and the bloody desert below started to churn. The endless bloody desert was forcibly torn apart by a force. At the same time, a massive Emperor's aura shrouded the area. Within this Emperor's aura, there was a supreme killing move. The extreme killing intent was enough to send chills down one's spine. Two figures suddenly appeared at the center of the rift. It was these two figures that had forcibly torn the blood desert apart. What's going on? Two quasi-emperors? Why did two quasi-emperors suddenly appear? Chu Fengmian's face changed drastically when the two auras appeared. These two figures were quasi-emperors. At this critical moment, two quasi-emperors suddenly appeared. Could it be that quasi-emperors were like cabbages? Why did two of them suddenly appear? It's as the ancient serpent chamber of commerce said. This brat is indeed here. The two figures were thin and small men. Their gazes suddenly fell on Chu Fengmian and the corners of their mouths curled up into a smile. That's right. The person that the Lei and Ho families want to kill is indeed him. Oh? This brat can actually fight against the Blood Serpent Emperor to such an extent? It seems like he does have some skills. No wonder he dares to go against the Hua and Lei families. The other figure observed for a while and said with some surprise. However, since our Hidden Killer Society has accepted this task, we have to do it beautifully. Today, we'll kill this brat first. However, this Blood Serpent Emperor is almost out of strength. Let's kill it together with this brat. The two men conversed with their spiritual consciousness. Although it was hidden, they couldn't hide it from Chu Fengmian. Hidden Killer Society? It's actually the Hidden Killer Society? The most mysterious assassin force in the ancient Serpent Nation. These two quasi-emperors are actually here to kill me? The Lei and Ho families. Are these assassins hired by the Lei and Ho families? Damn it. The ancient Serpent Chamber of Commerce actually sold me out. No wonder they offered such generous conditions. So that's the reason. Hearing the conversation between the two, Chu Fengmian immediately understood what the ancient Serpent Chamber of Commerce was planning. They told Chu Fengmian about the treasure land and asked him to come over. Then, they told the Lei and Ho families about Chu Fengmian's whereabouts. Then, the Hidden Killer Society's assassins came to assassinate him. Vicious. Chu Fengmian didn't expect the ancient Serpent Chamber of Commerce to be so vicious that they wanted to kill him. At the same time, Chu Fengmian was incomparably shocked. How did the ancient Serpent Chamber of Commerce find out about his identity? However, Chu Fengmian didn't bother to think about it. The ancient Serpent Chamber of Commerce, Hua family and Lei family had already been listed in Chu Fengmian's list of enemies. As long as Chu Fengmian didn't die today, he would definitely eliminate these three major forces in the future. However, before that, Chu Fengmian had to escape from the Blood Serpent Emperor and the two great assassins of the Hidden Killer Society. The three quasi-emperors before him wanted Chu Fengmian dead. Chapter 1123. Misfortunes never come singly. Chu Fengmian was already in a precarious situation when facing the Blood Snake Emperor. Who would have thought that two assassins from the Hidden Killer Society would intervene? The Ho family and the Lei family really thought highly of Chu Fengmian. They actually sent two quasi-emperors to kill Chu Fengmian. One had to know that the reward for hiring two quasi-emperors was astronomical. Chu Fengmian's current situation was even more precarious than before. The slightest carelessness could lead to eternal damnation. Martialists, why have you come to the territory of the Blood Snake clan? The Blood Snake Emperor asked coldly as he looked at the two quasi-emperors from the Hidden Killer Society. The assassins of the Hidden Killer Society weren't demon immortals, but human martialists. In the path of assassination, humans were much more advanced than demon immortals. This is the territory of the Blood Snake clan. You should leave quickly and forget about trespassing. This is the territory of the Blood Snake clan. How can a mere Blood Snake Emperor be a match for the two kings of assassins of the Hidden Killer Society? One of them looked at the Blood Snake Emperor and said disdainfully, Ming Sha, there's no need to talk nonsense with the Blood Snake Emperor. Just kill him. The bloodstone in his body can be sold for a good price. Alright then. Ming Sha, you deal with that brat. I'll deal with the Blood Snake Emperor. The two kings of assassins of the Hidden Killer Society confirmed their targets at the same time. Not only did they want to kill Chu Fengmian, but they also wanted to kill the Blood Snake Emperor. Ming Sha, Ming Sha. These two are the Ming Sha and Ming Sha of the four kings of assassins of the Hidden Killer Society? Chu Fengmian instantly knew the identities of these two men when he heard their conversation. It was said that there were four kings of assassins in the Hidden Killer Society. They were the Qi, Mei, Wang, and Lian. The two men before him were the Wang and Lian. The Lei family and the Hou family had really invested a lot of money to get these two kings of assassins to attack Chu Fengmian at the same time. Fortunately, these two kings of assassins aren't here to help the Blood Snake Emperor deal with me. Otherwise, I would definitely be dead. But now, I might still have a chance to escape. Chu Fengmian had already experienced countless life and death battles. He could escape from any danger. For Chu Fengmian, as long as there was a slim chance of survival, he could grasp it and escape with his life. The appearance of the two kings of assassins, Wang and Liang, brought a greater crisis to Chu Fengmian, but also made the scene more chaotic. This was an opportunity for Chu Fengmian. Damn it! A puny little martial artist dares to kill this emperor? I want to devour you alive too. Hearing Wang Sha's words, the Blood Snake Emperor was enraged. Previously, Chu Fengmian had said that he had taken his bloodstone. This had already infuriated the Blood Snake Emperor. Now that another person had said so, he was even more enraged. The gigantic body of the Blood Snake Emperor charged towards Wang Sha and struck out with his fists. As for Wang Sha, he was not to be outdone. In an instant, a dagger appeared in his hand. With a wave of the dagger, a river suddenly appeared in front of him. Within this river, every stream was a supreme killing move. Thousands of killing moves formed the long river of killing path. This was a power that could only be displayed when one's assassination path had reached the pinnacle. The long river of killing path rushed towards the Blood Snake Emperor. Damn it! Devour! The Blood Snake ruler sensed the danger and immediately retracted all of his spiritual power. It transformed into a vortex and condensed in front of him to resist the murderous river. At that moment, the pressure on Chu Fengmian's body suddenly disappeared. Even the Blood Snake Emperor could not multitask. When facing a quasi-emperor, he had to use his full strength. Let's go! The moment the pressure on Chu Fengmian disappeared, he did not hesitate. He immediately urged his escape light to leave. Not good. However, the moment the escape light was urged, Chu Fengmian instinctively felt uneasy. He hurriedly changed his direction. A blood-red light suddenly attacked Chu Fengmian. As long as Chu Fengmian hadn't stopped and changed his direction, this blood-red light would have been enough to kill him. This kind of killing was not a physical killing. It was the pinnacle of the assassination path. It was a one-hit kill. No matter how strong one's vitality was, if one's body was destroyed in an instant, one would not be able to recover. If Chu Fengmian had not experienced countless life and death battles and was extremely calm and not impulsive, he would have died just now. Oh? You were actually able to dodge this blade? It seems that you are indeed more mysterious than the rumors say. No one below the quasi-emperor level has ever been able to dodge my blade. A figure slowly appeared the moment the blood-red blade appeared. This figure was Wang Sha, the king of assassins of the Hidden Death Society. Wang Sha was a skinny old man. He looked at Chu Fengmian with a faint smile. Traces of murderous intent flashed in his eyes. He looked like a ferocious tiger. He was staring intently at his prey. If Chu Fengmian showed the slightest flaw, he would not hesitate to chop off his head. Kill Chu Fengmian. What a pity. Such a genius will eventually die in my hands. I heard that you are from the dragon race. But so what if you are from the dragon race? I, the Hidden Death Society, don't care about status. No one can avenge you if I kill you. Kid, remember not to offend people you shouldn't offend in your next life. Wang Sha sized up Chu Fengmian and saw that Chu Fengmian's realm was indeed the same as the information he had received. He was only at the Heaven's Mandate realm, so he did not care. Wang Sha took a step forward and suddenly attacked. A short dagger appeared in his hand. Martial artists who practiced the assassination path used short daggers, which were easy to hide in and could be unsheathed at any time. The moment the short dagger was unsheathed, the murderous intent that filled the sky condensed and turned into blades in the air. In an instant, thousands of blades condensed in front of Chu Fengmian, forming a world of blades. This move was much more mysterious than any blade technique Chu Fengmian had ever seen. Even Gongsun Qinjue, the genius of that generation, could not compare with Wang Sha in front of him. Sanglam killing 9 styles. Chu Fengmian had never seen such a blade technique before. It was obviously a blade technique from the ancient monster continent, which was also very mysterious. First, I'll find a flaw and then activate the Jianwang transformation to leave. I'll deal with these 2 kings of assassins in the future. Chu Fengmian made a decision in an instant. Soaring Serpent Power, 10,000 Sword After Images. The Soaring Serpent Power boiled up and poured into the spiritual swords in Chu Fengmian's hands. In an instant, the power burst out and tens of thousands of sword shadows soared into the sky. Chapter 11:24. The 2 kings of assassins in front of him might not be as difficult to deal with as the Blood Snake Emperor, but the battle with the Blood Snake Emperor had already exhausted most of Chu Fengmian's trump cards. In particular, the power of the Soaring Serpent transformation could only last for 2 more attacks. Without the support of the Soaring Serpent transformation, Chu Fengmian's strength was definitely at a disadvantage against the Quasi-Emperor. After all, Chu Fengmian's realm was still not enough to contend against the Quasi-Emperor. He still relied on the power of the Soaring Serpent transformation to fight against the Quasi-Emperor. It could be said that the Soaring Serpent transformation was Chu Fengmian's trump card against the Quasi-Emperor. In the battle with the Blood Snake Emperor, the Soaring Serpent transformation's power had already been exhausted by more than half. He originally wanted to conserve some of his strength, but Wu Sha clearly did not intend to give Chu Fengmian such an opportunity. Even a quasi-emperor would find it difficult to resist the sky full of blades without using his full strength. Sword break! Beside Chu Fengmian, tens of thousands of sword shadows soared into the sky and collided with the blades. Whether it was the sword or the blades, they were all shattered and disappeared. They are actually in a stalemate? Wu Sha's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise when he saw the stalemate. He had used his full strength in this move, but Chu Fengmian was still able to resist it. It seemed that the rumors were true. Chu Fengmian did indeed have the strength to contend against the quasi-emperor. He did not believe it at first, but now it seemed that it was true. Wu Sha looked at Chu Fengmian and sized him up, then suddenly laughed. I see. It seems that you have obtained the Soaring Serpent bloodline of the young master of the He clan. I just did not expect you to be able to use the power of the Soaring Serpent bloodline freely. This is the power of the Soaring Serpent bloodline, right? However, you should not be able to use it too many times in a short period of time. Very well, I will kill you and the Soaring Serpent bloodline will belong to me. In order to obtain the Soaring Serpent bloodline, I will kill you today even if you have a great background. Wu Sha looked at Chu Fengmian with excitement. Chu Fengmian was only in the heavenly fate realm, but he could use the power of the soaring serpent bloodline to contend against the quasi-emperor. If he obtained the soaring serpent bloodline and used his quasi-emperor power, his strength would be close to that of a true sovereign. When he thought of this, Xu Sha could no longer wait. He attacked again without any hesitation. A pitch-black figure enveloped him from behind. This pitch-black figure was wrapped in a black robe. Chu Fengmian knew that this was the creator of the way of assassination, the god of assassins. His figure was extremely mysterious, and no one knew what he looked like. The pitch-black figure's aura reached its peak the moment it enveloped Xu Sha's body. "Break!" he shouted angrily. "Rumble!" The sword shadows that filled the sky were all blown to smithereens. At the same time, Ba Sha charged towards Chu Fengmian, his dagger stabbing towards Chu Fengmian's chest. Chu Fengmian hurriedly used the two spiritual swords to block in front of him. However, he felt a terrifying power from the stab of the dagger and his body was sent flying. Chu Fengmian's 5 viscera and 6 bowels were all shaken. He only slowly recovered after flying for dozens of miles. Then, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Damn it! If the power of the soaring serpent transformation had not been exhausted, I might have been able to put up a fight. But now, the soaring serpent transformation is only left with the power of the last attack. I can't use it anymore. I must find an opportunity to kill him with one strike. Chu Fengmian cursed inwardly. These two great assassins were simply taking advantage of the situation. If Chu Fengmian used all his strength, even if he could not defeat Xu Sha, he would be able to fight a bloody battle with him and force him to retreat. It would be easy for him to escape unscathed. But now, he was forced into such a situation. Opportunity, flaw. This person must have a flaw. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. Xu Sha's figure had already caught up with him. "Oh, your body is quite tough. You didn't suffer any injuries?" Xu Sha looked at Chu Fengmian and sneered. "It seems like you can't use the soaring serpent bloodline anymore. Without the soaring serpent bloodline, you are just an ant. The next strike, I will take your life." Xu Sha's blade was slowly accumulating power. It seemed like he was about to launch a thunderous strike. "Wait, King of Assassins. You dare to kill me? Aren't you afraid of the people behind me?" Chu Fengmian suddenly asked. His eyes were deep and unfathomable. "The people from the Lei and Hua families dare not kill me. They only dare to send people from the Secret Assassin Society. Aren't you afraid that the Secret Assassin Society will be annihilated if you kill me?" "Humph, I don't care who you are. The Secret Assassin Society doesn't care about the identity of the people we want to kill. Moreover, you have the soaring serpent bloodline. Even if the people from the Lei and Hua families don't want your life, I, Xu Sha, will kill you." Xu Sha said disdainfully. He had killed many people, including countless members of major factions. However, he did not have any qualms about killing. If you want to beg for mercy, it is already too late. Your soaring serpent bloodline has already merged with your bloodline. Aside from killing you, there is no other way to take it away. Is that so? Then, take a look at this claw. Chu Fengmian did not argue. Suddenly, he gathered his spiritual energy and turned it into a war dragon claw. The 1,000 formations on this war dragon claw all activated, turning it into the appearance of primogenitor Jianwang. This is... Upon seeing the war dragon claw, Xu Sha's expression suddenly changed. A dragon race secret technique. This is a supreme dragon race secret technique. How can this be? Could you be the next dragon monarch of the Divine Dragon Empire? That's not right. If you are not the next dragon monarch, then who are you? Even the Divine Dragon Empire's princes are not qualified to practice it. Could you be from there? Someone actually came out from there? At this moment, an idea suddenly popped into Sadhu's mind. That's not right. While Xu Sha was distracted, Chu Fengmian suddenly made his move. The power of the soaring serpent infused into the two swords. Then, the war dragon claw suddenly swept out. Crack! The war dragon claw's sweep struck the pitch-black image behind Shusha, shattering it. At the same time, the two swords slashed at Shusha. Damn it! Brat, you actually launched a sneak attack. Shusha instantly understood what was going on. He was both shocked and furious. He gathered his spiritual energy to the limit and formed a long river in front of him. It was as if the two sides of this long river were divided into two different worlds. No matter how strong one could not cross this long river. Jianwang transformation. At this moment, Chu Fengmian suddenly withdrew his spirit energy. A whirlpool suddenly appeared behind him. His body stepped into the whirlpool and disappeared without a trace. Damn it! Chapter 11:25. At the edge of the bloody world, a piece of gravel was drifting in the bloody world. If one were to observe carefully, they would be able to see a small crack on the gravel. However, if one did not pay close attention to it, they would not be able to notice it. Moreover, no warrior would be willing to put their energy into such a small piece of gravel. In the heart of the gravel, a figure was sitting cross-legged. This figure was Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had taken advantage of Zhu Sha's hesitation to suddenly attack. Zhu Sha thought that Chu Fengmian wanted to die, but at that time, Chu Fengmian was ready to escape. He directly used the power of Jianwang transformation to tear the space and escape. Then, he found this piece of broken stone and snuck into it to recover his strength. Fortunately, Zhu Sha hesitated at the last moment, which gave me an opportunity to escape. Otherwise, unless I used the Bloodslayer demon sword, it would be almost impossible to escape. Chu Fengmian secretly rejoiced. His last words were actually to deceive Zhu Sha. It seemed that Zhu Sha really thought that there was a force behind Chu Fengmian, which was why he hesitated for a while and gave Chu Fengmian the opportunity to escape. It seems that the ancient Serpent Empire is not as simple as it seems. The existence of the Hidden Killer Society is a proof. Since the Hidden Killer Society is hidden, there should be other hidden forces. Moreover, the 8 great royal families are not as simple as they seem. Chu Fengmian calculated in his heart. When dealing with the Blood Serpent Emperor, he was a little reckless, which gave Wang Sha and Zhu Sha the opportunity. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian escaped. However, this adventure was not without gains. Chu Fengmian took away the bloodstones in the body of the myriad blood serpent. At the same time, he also took away the bloodstones hidden under the bloody desert. Adding the bloodstones in the body of the divine saber 5th ancestor that Chu Fengmian had killed, the number of bloodstones in Chu Fengmian's body should have exceeded 100,000. When I break through and reach the ultimate realm, the Blood Serpent Emperor, Wang Sha, and Zhu Sha will all die. Chu Fengmian's eyes were brimming with murderous intent. He had almost been robbed and his boat capsized in the gutter. In such a dangerous situation, the slightest bit of carelessness would have resulted in him being consigned to eternal damnation. Chu Fengmian already had an irreconcilable enmity with the ancient Snake Merchant Association and the Secret Killer Society. Of course, Chu Fengmian would not let the Lei and Hua families off either. However, Chu Fengmian's greatest opponents were still the 2 quasi-emperors, Wang Sha and Hou Sha, the kings of assassins. Although Chu Fengmian had left temporarily, the 2 of them were definitely still in the bloody world hunting Chu Fengmian down. Chu Fengmian was clear about the rules of the Secret Killer Society. Since they had decided to kill Chu Fengmian, they would not give up halfway. The 2 of them were probably still searching for Chu Fengmian in the world of blood, planning to kill him. Fortunately, the world of fresh blood was so vast that it was not easy for the 2 quasi-emperors to find Chu Fengmian quickly. Moreover, Chu Fengmian had already concealed his aura. Even if they used their spiritual sense to sweep over him, they would not be able to find him. Since I've obtained enough bloodstones, I'll devour them first. As long as I have enough power, I will destroy the ancient Snake Merchant Association and the Secret Killer Society one by one. Power. What Chu Fengmian lacked was power. Although Chu Fengmian's strength was no different from a quasi-emperor under the state of the soaring serpent transformation, he could only last for a period of time. But Teng's snake transformation could only last for a minute. Chu Fengmian had used Teng's snake transformation to fight Blood Snake King, but Wang Sha and Ho Sha had taken advantage of him. Chu Fengmian had almost been killed by them. Only when Chu Fengmian truly stepped into the celestial stage and his bloodline was upgraded again, would Chu Fengmian possess the strength to fight against the quasi-emperor. Bloodstones. Chu Fengmian's mind moved and all the bloodstones in his empty ring flew out. Chu Fengmian did not hesitate and suddenly opened his mouth. These bloodstones all fell into Chu Fengmian's mouth and turned into pure spiritual energy that was constantly refined by Chu Fengmian. Now, Chu Fengmian had a total of 110,000 bloodstones in his hand. Now, Chu Fengmian was ready to use the power of these 110,000 bloodstones to upgrade his bloodline and raise his cultivation level. Battle Dragon Art. Chu Fengmian activated the power of the Battle Dragon bloodline in his body to the extreme. These bloodstones merged into Chu Fengmian's body, causing his Battle Dragon bloodline to undergo earth-shattering changes. Soon, these 110,000 bloodstones were directly devoured by Chu Fengmian's body. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's aura gradually stabilized. However, this was only the beginning. The power of these bloodstones had started to merge with the Battle Dragon bloodline in Chu Fengmian's body. They started to merge into one. Gradually, an ancient power started to awaken in the Battle Dragon bloodline. The ancient Battle Dragon is said to be the bloodline closest to the primogenitor Jianwang. Indeed, it has started to awaken the power of primogenitor Jianwang. It was said that the ancient Battle Dragon was the first-generation bloodline created by primogenitor Jianwang. Its power was infinitely close to the level of primogenitor Jianwang. The powerful ancient Battle Dragon could also break through the void and roam the world like primogenitor Jianwang. However, such existences were the kings and emperors of the ancient Battle Dragon. Chu Fengmian's first level of Battle Dragon art had reached the pinnacle, but he was only at the level of an ordinary ancient Battle Dragon. This ancient power was originally far beyond Chu Fengmian's reach. However, these bloodstones contained the power of a god. They were slowly awakening the power of the most ancient and mysterious primogenitor Jianwang in the ancient Battle Dragon bloodline. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. A total of 7 days had passed. Chu Fengmian's bloodline was slowly changing. Although there was no change in his cultivation realm, the power of his bloodline was completely different from before. The power of the 110,000 bloodstones had been fully integrated into his bloodline, allowing it to evolve continuously. Roar! In an instant, a dragon roar was heard from Chu Fengmian's back. A total of 9,999 spirit designs appeared on the ancient war dragon's body. The 9,999 spirit designs revolved around the ancient war dragon's body. Chapter 11:26. It was said that the body of the first ancestor heavenly dragon was surrounded by 129,600 formations. Although the Battle Dragon phantasm before him only had 9,999 formations, at a glance, it already contained some of the first ancestor heavenly dragon's charm. In the memories of the ancient Battle Dragon clan, the most powerful ancient Battle Dragon had the opportunity to break through the limit and comprehend 129,600 formations to transform into progenitor Jianwang. Chu Fengmian felt that his current power had undergone a qualitative change. The instant the 9,999 Dharma rays were activated, Chu Fengmian felt a power that wasn't inferior to the soaring serpent transformation. Furthermore, this power was even more natural than the soaring serpent transformation. The power of the soaring serpent transformation was more like an external power that Chu Fengmian borrowed. This power came from Chu Fengmian's bloodline. It was a power that truly belonged to him. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's flesh and blood were undergoing the same transformation. The advancement of his bloodline meant that he had become stronger in all aspects. These 110,000 bloodstones are just enough for me to advance my bloodline once. Chu Fengmian stood up. Suddenly, he couldn't help but frown. What's going on? My cultivation. Why didn't I break through? Originally, according to Chu Fengmian's calculations, the moment his bloodline ascended would also be the moment his cultivation realm broke through. But now, Chu Fengmian's bloodline had ascended. However, his cultivation was still at the heavenly mandate realm. In fact, it had fallen from the peak of the heavenly mandate realm. This caused Chu Fengmian to be somewhat puzzled. Something's not right. My spiritual energy is also a bit stronger than before. Could it be that it's harder to break through the bottleneck? Chu Fengmian observed for a moment and discovered that his spiritual energy hadn't actually decreased. On the contrary, it was even stronger than before. This meant that Chu Fengmian's cultivation hadn't actually decreased. Because of the advancement of his bloodline, the threshold for Chu Fengmian's breakthrough had become even higher. The more talented a cultivator was, the more powerful their bloodline would be. Therefore, it would be thousands of times more difficult for them to break through compared to ordinary cultivators. For example, Chu Fengmian's every breakthrough was thousands of times more difficult than ordinary cultivators. He didn't expect that the advancement of his bloodline would make it even more difficult for him to break through. This made Chu Fengmian smile bitterly. For others, the advancement of their bloodline was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but Chu Fengmian couldn't bring himself to smile. As a result, Chu Fengmian's original plan to break through had to be delayed again. However, it was a good thing. Chu Fengmian's bloodline represented his future achievements. Bloodstones of Chu's bloodline were of no use. Therefore, he could take advantage of the time before his breakthrough to find more bloodstones to help him advance his bloodline. Right now, I have 9,999 formations. When facing a quasi-emperor, if I work with the soaring serpent transformation, I might be able to kill him in one strike. Even if I cannot defeat him, I should be able to escape safely. The strength of the soaring serpent transformation is also gradually recovering. As Chu Fengmian thought of this, he quietly spread out his spiritual consciousness. It had been 7 days since he sneaked into this piece of broken stone. This piece of broken stone had been flying around in the world of blood. Chu Fengmian didn't know where he was. The world of blood was full of danger. When he encountered the Blood Serpent Emperor, Chu Fengmian already knew that the Blood Serpent Emperor possessed the bloodline of the Heaven-Devouring Beast, which was enough to use the Heaven-Devouring secret technique. Chu Fengmian was almost swallowed by the Blood Serpent Emperor. Even a quasi-emperor wouldn't find it difficult to deal with the Heaven-Devouring secret technique. It was no wonder that according to the rumors, even some quasi-emperors were in danger of dying in the world of blood. If he encountered the ancient Serpent Emperor, even a slightly weaker quasi-emperor would be swallowed by his heaven-devouring secret technique. In the world of blood, the Blood Serpent clan was only considered a small clan. There were many more powerful blood demon clans, and it was said that there were sovereigns in the world of blood. Chu Fengmian had to be careful. This place is actually close to the core of the world of blood. Chu Fengmian observed his surroundings, and at the same time, according to the information in his memory, he discovered that Chu Fengmian had been constantly cultivating in this place of broken rocks. These broken rocks were constantly drifting in the world of blood and were already drifting towards the core of the world of blood. The place where Chu Fengmian was now could be considered the heart of the bloody world. However, this heart also referred to an extremely large area. It was just that the number of bloodstones in this area would increase by a lot. At a glance, Chu Fengmian discovered more than 100 bloodstones. If he were at the edge, he wouldn't be able to find so many bloodstones even after 2 hours. However, Chu Fengmian didn't care about these bloodstones. The number of bloodstones he needed now was at least in the tens of thousands. A few hundred bloodstones were considered a lot for other martial artists, but for Chu Fengmian, it was just a drop in the bucket. Chu Fengmian had consumed a total of 110,000 bloodstones to upgrade his bloodline this time. The next upgrade would require at least twice that number, at least 220,000 bloodstones. A treasure land. If I encounter a large treasure land, it would contain at least 100,000 bloodstones. If I can find one, I might be able to gather 220,000 bloodstones, Chu Fengmian thought. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. After using the bloodstone to upgrade his bloodline and tasting its sweetness, Chu Fengmian's desire for the bloodstone was even stronger than before. The power of the bloodstones was really amazing. It could upgrade the bloodline of the primordial battle dragon. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Furthermore, the advancement of his bloodline had brought Chu Fengmian such great benefits. If he could advance his bloodline again, then Chu Fengmian would obtain even more benefits. As Chu Fengmian pondered and used his spiritual sense to search for traces of treasures in the surroundings, his eyes suddenly flickered. Not far ahead, there was a desolate planet full of desert. However, Chu Fengmian could clearly see pieces of bloodstones lying on the ground. A treasure land that contains at least 30,000 bloodstones. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.